"You're coming with me," the one-armed cowboy said, and those 4 words saved a dying family from the desert's jaws. What happens when a heavily pregnant widow dragging 5 starving children through hell meets a stranger who's already lost everything? When mercy costs more than a man has left to give. This is the story of Clara Dunn and Bo Riker, 2 broken souls who built a family from ash and desperation under the merciless Arizona sun. Stay until the end to see how one choice changed 7 lives forever. And comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The desert didn't care who you were. It didn't care if you were brave or cowardly, righteous or wicked. It took what it wanted, water from your body, hope from your heart, and eventually your last breath. Clara Dunn understood this with a clarity that burned hotter than the sun beating down on her bare, bloodied feet. She was 7 months pregnant and pulling a wagon. Not with a horse, not with an ox. With her own 2 hands, a frayed rope cutting trenches into her palms, and a will that was fracturing like sun-baked earth. Inside the wagon, 5 children huddled in whatever shade the torn canvas provided. 2 were hers, Emma, age 8, with her mother's dark hair and her father's stubborn chin, and Thomas, barely 6, still asking when Papa would come home. The other 3 were ghosts of someone else's tragedy. Lily, 5 years old with hollowed cheeks, Samuel, 7, who hadn't spoken since the bandits came, and baby Grace, not yet 2, who cried weakly for milk that didn't exist. The attack had happened 4 days ago. 4 days that felt like 40. Clara's wagon had been part of a small caravan heading west. 3 families seeking new starts in California, away from the poverty and prejudice of Missouri. They'd been warned about bandits, but warnings are easy to dismiss when desperation is louder. The bandits had come at dawn, whooping and firing pistols into the air. Clara's husband, Michael, had grabbed his rifle and shouted for everyone to get down. The other men had done the same. It should have been enough. 6 armed men against 4 raiders. The numbers were in their favor. But numbers meant nothing when the bandits had been doing this for years, when they knew exactly where to aim, exactly how to move. Michael had taken a bullet to the chest before he'd fired a single shot. The other men had fallen just as quickly. The bandits had taken everything: horses, food, water, weapons, even the wedding rings off the dead men's fingers. They'd left the women and children alive, but just barely, with 1 broken wagon and a canteen half full of water that was already gone by sunset of the first day. The other 2 women, Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen, had died on the second day. Heat stroke, Clara thought, though she wasn't sure. One moment they'd been walking, the next they'd simply folded to the ground like paper dolls in a fire. Clara had buried them as best she could with the children watching, digging shallow graves with a broken plank because there was nothing else. She'd tried to say words over them, something about God and mercy and rest, but her mouth had been too dry and the words had crumbled to dust. That left her alone with 5 children, no water, no food, and a baby growing inside her that kicked and pressed against her ribs, as if demanding to know what kind of world it was being born into. Clara pulled, 1 foot forward, then the other. The rope bit deeper. Blood made the hemp slippery in her grip. Behind her, the wagon wheels groaned and stuttered over rocks and sand. "Mama?" Emma's voice drifted from inside the wagon, small and afraid. "Mama, can we stop?" "Not yet, baby." Clara's voice came out as a rasp. When had she last had water? Yesterday morning, a few drops shared among 6 mouths. "Not yet." "Thomas says his tummy hurts. I know, mine too." "Are we going to die, Mama?" Clara stumbled. The question hit harder than the heat. She wanted to say no, wanted to promise sunshine and safety and full bellies. But lies tasted wrong in this place. The desert had a way of burning through pretense. "Not if I can help it," she said instead, and pulled harder. The sun climbed higher. Clara's vision blurred and doubled. She'd stopped sweating hours ago, or was it yesterday? And that scared her more than anything. She'd seen heat stroke before. This was how it started. The baby kicked, hard. Clara gasped and nearly dropped the rope. Her hand went to her swollen belly, feeling the shape of a tiny foot pushing out against her palm. "Not yet," she thought desperately. "Please, not yet. We're not ready. I can't bring you into this." "Miss Clara?" The voice was so quiet she almost missed it. Lily. The little girl crawled to the front of the wagon, her blonde hair matted with sweat and dust. Miss Clara, Samuel won't wake up. Terror shot through Clara's chest like ice. She dropped the rope and climbed into the wagon with movements that felt like swimming through honey. Samuel lay in the corner, his skin pale and waxy, his lips cracked and bleeding. His chest rose and fell, but just barely. Samuel, Samuel, honey, can you hear me? Clara touched his forehead, burning hot. She looked at the other children, at their hollow eyes and cracked lips. Emma was holding baby Grace, trying to get her to stop whimpering. Thomas sat with his knees pulled to his chest, rocking slightly. They were all dying. Slowly, degree by degree, the desert was claiming them. Clara's hands shook as she backed out of the wagon. She picked up the rope again, feeling every blister pop and tear as the hemp bit into her raw flesh. She pulled. The wagon didn't move. She pulled harder, throwing her whole body into it, and the wheels finally grudged forward an inch. 1 inch. Then another. Then another. This is how we die, a voice whispered in her head. 1 inch at a time until there's nothing left. No, Clara said aloud. No, no, no! She pulled. The world narrowed to the rope, the pain, the heat, the endless stretch of sand and rock ahead. Her feet left bloody prints. The baby kicked again, and Clara sobbed, a dry heaving sound that brought no tears because there was no water left in her body for crying. Miss Clara, Lily again, her voice floating from the wagon. Are we leftovers? Clara stopped. The question made no sense. What? Leftovers, the things nobody wants. Mama used to say we'd eat leftovers when there wasn't enough food for real dinner. Samuel and Grace and me, our mamas died. Nobody wanted us. Are we the leftovers nobody wants? The words broke something in Clara that all the heat and pain and death hadn't managed to touch. She opened her mouth to answer, to say something, anything, but her legs chose that moment to stop working. She went down hard, her knees hitting the sand with a jolt that sent white lightning through her vision. The rope fell from her hands. She couldn't get up. She tried. God, she tried. But her body had finally, mercifully, quit. Clara's head swam. The sand beneath her palms felt like it was tilting, spinning, pulling her down into its burning embrace. Mama! Emma's scream came from far away, or maybe right next to her. Mama, get up! Please, get up! I can't, Clara thought. I'm sorry. I tried. I tried so hard. The children were crying now, at least the ones who had energy left to cry. Clara lay on her side in the sand, watching the wagon shimmer and blur in the heat. She couldn't protect them, couldn't save them. The desert was going to take them all, just like it had taken Michael, just like it had taken the other women, just like it would take her baby who would never draw a first breath. I'm sorry, she thought. Michael, I'm sorry. I tried to get them somewhere safe. I tried to finish what we started. I'm so sorry. The sky above was white with heat. Clara closed her eyes. A shadow fell across her face. At first she thought it was death, the final darkness coming to collect what the desert had claimed. But then a hand touched her shoulder, rough and warm and undeniably real. Ma'am, can you hear me? The voice was male, low and rough as gravel, with an accent that spoke of Texas ranges and long trails. Clara forced her eyes open. The sun blazed behind a figure on horseback, turning him into a dark silhouette haloed in fire. She couldn't make out details, just the outline of a hat, broad shoulders, a horse standing patient and still. Please, Clara whispered. The words scraped out of her throat like glass. Please don't take from us. There's nothing left. Please. The figure dismounted in one smooth motion. Boots hit the sand with a soft thud. He knelt beside her, and Clara's vision cleared enough to see his face, weather-worn and hard, with lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth. A dark beard covered his jaw. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray and distant and unreadable. What struck her most was his left arm, or rather, where his left arm should have been. The sleeve of his dusty coat was pinned up at the shoulder, empty. Nobody's taking anything, the man said. His voice was quiet but steady. How many in your party? 5 children, Clara managed. Me. My baby. She put a hand on her belly. Please, they need water, food. I couldn't. Shh. Stop talking. Save your strength. The man stood and walked to his horse. Clara watched through blurred vision as he untied a canteen from his saddle. He came back, knelt again, and lifted Clara's head with surprising gentleness. Small sips, don't gulp. The water touched Clara's lips and she nearly wept. It was warm from the sun, but tasted like salvation. The man let her have 3 small swallows, then pulled the canteen away. "The children," Clara gasped. "Please, give it to—" "I will. Stay here." He left her and approached the wagon. Clara heard Emma's frightened voice. "Don't hurt us, mister. We don't have nothing." "I'm not here to hurt you." The man's voice was patient. "I have water. Come here, one at a time." Clara listened to him give each child water, his voice low and steady, talking them through it. "Small sips, don't drink too fast. I know you're thirsty, but your stomach can't handle much." When baby Grace started crying, Clara heard him murmur something so soft she couldn't make out the words, but the baby quieted. Then he was back at his horse, untying saddlebags. He pulled out dried meat, hard biscuits, a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He brought it to the wagon, and Clara heard the children's gasping gratitude as he distributed the food. "Not too much," he warned. "Eat slow. If you eat too fast, you'll just bring it back up." He returned to Clara, bringing more water and a piece of biscuit softened in water. She ate mechanically, her mind spinning. This didn't make sense. Men in the desert didn't help. They took. The bandits had taught her that lesson in blood. "Why?" she asked when she could form words again. The man didn't answer immediately. He was examining her feet, his one hand moving carefully over the torn skin. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe, or pain. Hard to tell. "Why what?" he asked finally. "Why are you helping us?" He glanced at her, then back at her feet. "Can't leave a woman and 5 children to die in the desert. Wouldn't be right. Most men would. I'm not most men." He stood and walked back to his horse. Clara watched in confusion as he began unhitching gear from the saddle. "Your wagon still roll?" I think so. The axle's cracked, but we'll make it work." He led the horse to the front of the wagon and began hitching it up with quick, efficient movements, one-handed. Clara stared. She'd seen 2-handed men struggle with less complicated knots. "What are you doing?" she asked. "What's it look like?" "Can't have you pulling this thing yourself. Kill you and the baby both." "But your horse, you need—" "Horse can handle a wagon for a while and done it before." He finished the hitch and checked it twice, pulling on the leather to test the strength. Then he came back to Clara and, without asking permission, scooped her up in his one arm like she weighed nothing. Clara gasped, grabbing at his shoulder for balance. "Wait, I can—" "No, you can't." He carried her to the wagon and set her down carefully on the driver's bench. His expression was stern. "You've run yourself into the ground, ma'am. You need rest." "I don't have time to rest. We need to—" "You want to live another day?" His gray eyes met hers, and Clara saw something in them that made her throat tight. Not pity, not quite sympathy. Something harder and sadder and more honest. "Then you're coming with me." He didn't wait for an answer. He turned, grabbed the horse's reins, and started walking. The horse followed, and the wagon lurched forward with a groan of protesting wood. Inside, the children grabbed for handholds, but none of them cried out. They were too exhausted even for alarm. Clara sat on the bench, swaying with the wagon's movement, watching the stranger's back as he led them deeper into the desert. His shoulders were straight despite the weight of the pack he carried. His stride was steady, purposeful. A man who knew exactly where he was going. "Wait," Clara called. "What's your name?" He didn't turn around. Bo Riker." "I'm Clara Dunn. Pleasure, Mrs. Dunn." "Where are you taking us?" "Somewhere safe." "Where's somewhere safe in the middle of nowhere?" "You'll see." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to demand better answers, but exhaustion was pulling at her like quicksand. The water and food sat heavy in her stomach. The baby had stopped kicking, settling into a quiet stillness that she hoped meant sleep and not something worse. Emma climbed up to sit beside her on the bench. The little girl's hand slipped into Clara's, small and warm and trembling. "Mama, Is he going to hurt us? Clara looked at her daughter's upturned face, saw the fear and desperate hope warring in her eyes. She thought about Bo Riker's gentle handling of her torn feet, the way he'd given water to the children first, the quiet firmness in his voice when he'd said, "I'm not here to hurt you." "No, baby," Clara whispered. "I don't think he is." They traveled for what felt like hours. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Clara dozed fitfully, waking every time the wagon hit a particularly rough patch. Emma stayed beside her, keeping watch like a tiny sentinel. Bo never stopped, never slowed. He led the horse with steady patience, occasionally speaking to the animal in low tones Clara couldn't quite catch. Once, she saw him reach up to wipe sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, his only hand, and the gesture struck her as unbearably lonely somehow. What kind of man was this? Where had he come from? Where had he been going before he found them? And most importantly, what did he want? Men didn't help for free. Clara had learned that lesson long before today. There was always a price, always an expectation. Her stomach turned at the thought, at the implications, but she was too tired and too desperate to care. If Bo Riker wanted payment for saving their lives, she'd find a way to pay it. She'd do whatever she had to do to keep these children alive. "Up ahead," Bo called back. "See those rocks?" Clara squinted. In the fading light, she could just make out a formation of boulders rising from the desert floor, like the broken teeth of some ancient giant. They were massive, easily 30 feet tall, clustered together in a rough circle. "What about them?" Clara asked. "Shelter. We'll camp there tonight." The wagon groaned and complained as Bo guided them around the base of the rocks. On the far side, Clara saw what he'd been aiming for. A natural alcove formed where 3 boulders leaned together, creating a space protected from the wind. Someone had been here before. There were the remains of a fire circle, a few scattered pieces of wood, and what looked like the skeleton of an old hunting shelter, a frame of sticks with torn canvas hanging from it, like the skin of something long dead. Bo unhitched his horse and led it to a shaded spot where a tiny trickle of water seeped from between 2 rocks into a shallow depression. The horse drank gratefully while Bo checked its legs and hooves with his one hand, moving with the easy competence of a man who'd been caring for horses his entire life. Then he came to the wagon and helped Clara down. Her legs buckled when her feet touched ground, and Bo caught her with his arm around her waist. "Easy. You're dehydrated and exhausted. Your body needs time. The children, I'll see to them. You sit." It wasn't a suggestion. Bo guided Clara to a flat rock in the shade and gently pushed her down onto it. Then he turned to the wagon and began lifting children out one by one. Emma came first, then Thomas, then Lily with baby Grace in her arms, and finally Samuel, who Bo carried with extra care. The boy still hadn't woken up. Bo laid Samuel in the shade and examined him carefully, checking his pulse, his breathing, the color of his skin. Clara watched, her heart in her throat. "He's alive," Bo said quietly. "Unconscious from heat and dehydration, but alive. We need to cool him down and get fluids into him." "How?" Bo looked around, his eyes assessing, calculating. Then he stood and started moving with sudden purpose. He went to his saddlebags and pulled out a small pot. He carried it to the trickle of water and positioned it to catch the flow, slow but steady. While it filled, he gathered the driest wood he could find from the scattered debris around the rocks. Clara watched in amazement as he built a fire one-handed, arranging kindling, striking flint against steel with the pot wedged between his knees for stability, coaxing the first sparks into flame with the kind of patience that spoke of thousands of cold nights and lonely camps. When the fire was burning steady, he set the pot on rocks at the edge of the flames. The water heated slowly. Bo used his knife to tear strips from what looked like an old shirt from his pack, dropping them into the warming water. "What are you doing?" Clara asked. "Making a compress. Warm water on the wrists and neck can help bring someone back from heat stroke without shocking their system. Cold water's too much of a shock." He knew what he was doing. This wasn't his first time saving someone from the desert's grip. When the water was warm enough, Bo wrung out the cloth strips and placed them carefully on Samuel's wrists, neck, and forehead. The boy stirred slightly, a small moan escaping his cracked lips. "That's it," Bo murmured. "Come on back, son." Come on back." The other children watched in silence, their eyes huge and frightened. Thomas had his thumb in his mouth, something Clara hadn't seen him do since he was 3. Lily held baby Grace so tightly the infant squirmed in protest. Emma stood close to Clara, her hand gripping her mother's shoulder. After what felt like an eternity, Samuel's eyes fluttered open. He stared up at Bo in confusion, then fear. "Easy," Bo said softly. "You're safe. You've been sick, but you're going to be all right now. Think you can drink some water?" Samuel's response was barely a whisper. "Yes, sir." Bo helped him drink, supporting the boy's head with his one hand, tipping the canteen carefully. When Samuel had managed a few swallows, Bo lowered him back down. "Rest now. We'll try more later." Samuel's eyes drifted closed again, but this time his breathing was stronger, more even. Clara felt something break loose in her chest, a tension she'd been carrying so tightly it had become part of her skeleton. Samuel was going to live. They were all going to live, at least through tonight. The sun touched the horizon, and the temperature began to drop with the sudden intensity of the desert. Within an hour, it would go from scorching to frigid. Clara had learned that the hard way over the past 4 days. Bo seemed to know it too. He stood and surveyed the broken hunting shelter, then the children, then the supplies he had. "Not enough," he muttered. "Not enough what?" Clara asked. "Blankets, canvas, materials." He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "That shelter's not going to keep 5 children warm tonight, not the way it is. We've been cold before. Cold's one thing, hypothermia's another. Can't have you people surviving the day just to die in the night." He turned to his horse. "Come on, Red. Let's see what we can make work." For the next hour, Clara watched Bo Riker perform what could only be described as miracles. With one arm, a knife, some rope, and a fierce determination that bordered on stubbornness, he rebuilt the hunting shelter. He lashed new supports to the old frame, stretched the torn canvas tight and tied it down, gathered dried brush to stuff in the gaps for insulation, and spread his own bedroll on the ground inside for the children to lie on. He worked without stopping, without complaining, with the kind of focused intensity Clara associated with men fighting for their lives. Except Bo wasn't fighting for his life. He was fighting for theirs. When he finally stepped back, sweat dripping down his face despite the cooling air, the shelter looked almost solid. Not perfect, not pretty, but functional. Safe. "All right," he said, breathing hard. "Children inside. We need to keep body heat in." Emma helped gather the little ones. They crawled into the shelter and huddled together on the bedroll, their small bodies pressed close for warmth. Bo draped his horse blanket over them. It smelled of animal and leather but was thick and warm, and then added his coat on top. "But you'll be cold," Emma protested. "I'll manage. Fire will keep me warm enough." "Mama too," Thomas said. "Mama needs to stay warm for the baby." Bo's eyes shifted to Clara. She saw him take in her swollen belly, the exhaustion in her face, the way she was shivering already, though the sun had only just set. "Right," he said. "Mrs. Dunn. Inside." "There's no room?" "There's room. Get in." Clara wanted to argue, but she was so cold, so tired, and the baby was moving restlessly like it was cold too. She crawled into the shelter and settled near the edge, trying not to take up too much space. Emma immediately curled against her, and Thomas pressed close on the other side. Lily, Samuel, and Grace arranged themselves nearby, and somehow they all fit, a tangle of limbs and shared warmth beneath the horse blanket and coat. Bo stood outside, feeding wood to the fire. The flames grew, pushing back the darkness, and Clara could see his silhouette against the light, alone, one-armed, keeping watch. "Mr. Riker?" she called softly. "Thank you." He didn't turn around. "Sleep, Mrs. Dunn. Morning comes quick." Clara closed her eyes and, for the first time in 4 days, felt something almost like safety settle over her. The children's breathing slowed and deepened as they fell into real sleep, not the half-conscious daze of heat exhaustion. The baby kicked once, gently, then stilled. Outside, Bo Riker kept watch as the stars came out one by one, as the fire crackled and sparked, as the desert night wrapped around them cold and vast and full of dangers Clara couldn't even imagine. But for now, they were alive. They were together. And there was a man with one arm standing between them and the darkness, asking nothing in return. Clara's last thought before sleep took her was a question she couldn't answer. Who are you, Bo Riker? And why did you save us? Clara woke to the smell of cooking meat and the sound of wood crackling in a fire. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was back in Missouri, in the small cabin she and Michael had shared, and he was making breakfast before heading out to the fields. Then Emma shifted beside her, and baby Grace whimpered, and reality crashed back down with the weight of 1,000 stones. Michael was dead. They were in the desert, and a stranger was cooking something that made her stomach clench with hunger so fierce it hurt. She extracted herself carefully from the tangle of sleeping children and crawled out of the shelter. The morning sun was just cresting the horizon, painting the rocks in shades of gold and amber. The air was already warming, the brutal cold of night retreating like it had never existed. Bo knelt by the fire, turning a spit with his one hand. 2 rabbits roasted over the flames, their skin crisping and popping with fat. His rifle lay within easy reach, and Clara realized with a start that he'd been hunting while they slept. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Sleep all right?" "Better than I have in days." Clara sat on the same flat rock from last night, her body protesting every movement. Everything hurt, her feet, her back, her hands where the rope had torn them open. "Where did you get the rabbits?" "Snares. Set them last night, checked them at dawn." He glanced at her, his gray eyes unreadable in the early light. "How's the baby?" Clara's hand went automatically to her belly. "Moving. That's good, I think." "Moving's good. Means it's strong." He turned the spit again, examining the meat critically. "You eat meat?" "Yes, we all do." "Good. These'll be done soon. Get some food in those children, they'll start feeling human again." The word human struck Clara as oddly specific, like Bo was intimately familiar with the space between human and not human, between living and just surviving. She studied him in the morning light, the hard lines of his face, the permanent squint around his eyes from years of staring at distant horizons. The way he moved with his one arm like the missing limb had never existed at all. "How long have you been out here?" she asked. "In the desert, I mean." "Long enough." He pulled the rabbits off the fire and set them on a flat rock to cool. 3 years, give or take. Used to work cattle in Texas before the war. After I got back, couldn't seem to settle. Started drifting west. "The war took your arm?" "Sharpshooter took my arm. War just happened to be where we met." His tone was flat, matter of fact, like he was discussing the weather. "Mini a ball through the shoulder at Shiloh. Field surgeon said it was the arm or die of infection. Wasn't much of a choice." Clara watched him portion out the rabbit meat with his knife, the movements precise and practiced. "I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm alive. A lot of good men aren't." He set aside what looked like the best pieces. "I'm going to wake the children. They need food more than sleep." He was right, of course, but Clara still felt a pang of guilt as the children emerged from the shelter one by one, squinting against the sunlight like small animals leaving their den. Samuel looked stronger today, though still pale and unsteady. Lily held baby Grace, who was crying, a weak, pitiful sound that made Clara's heart ache. "She's hungry," Lily said anxiously. "I tried to calm her, but she won't stop." "She's too young for solid food," Clara said, taking the baby. Grace was burning with fever, her tiny body hot and dry. "She needs milk, and she's sick." Bo's jaw tightened. He looked at the baby for a long moment, then turned and rummaged through his saddlebags. He pulled out a small leather pouch and brought it to Clara. "Dried chamomile. Had a fever once on the trail, old prospector made me tea from this. Helped." He paused. "Won't be much for a baby that small, but might take the edge off." "You carry medicine?" "I carry what keeps a man alive when he's alone." Bo took the pouch back and went to heat water in his pot. "Out here, that includes bandages, whiskey, and whatever plants I can identify as helpful rather than poisonous." While the water heated, Bo served out the rabbit to the other children. Emma took hers with wide eyes, barely waiting for it to cool before tearing into it. Thomas ate more slowly, watching Bo like he expected the man to snatch the food away at any moment. Samuel and Lily shared pieces, alternating bites with a careful fairness that suggested they'd been hungry before, long before the desert. Chew slow, Bo warned. Your stomachs aren't ready for a lot of food at once. You eat too fast, you'll lose it all. Emma paused mid-bite. How do you know? Because I've been hungry enough to learn the hard way. He poured hot water over the chamomile and let it steep, filling the morning air with a gentle herbal scent. Hunger's a patient teacher. Painful, but patient. When the tea had cooled enough, Bo showed Clara how to give it to Grace with a cloth, dipping the fabric in the liquid and letting the baby suck on it. It was slow, tedious work, but after a few minutes, Grace's crying quieted to whimpers, then finally to silence as she fell into an exhausted sleep. You're good at this, Clara said quietly. Taking care of people, I mean. Bo shrugged. Had practice. Trail's not forgiving of mistakes. You learn fast or you don't learn at all. But why us? You could have ridden past. Most men would have. He was quiet for so long Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Then he stood and walked to the edge of the rock shelter, looking out over the desert. His back was to her when he finally spoke. Years back, I came across a homestead. Heard the screaming from a mile off, woman in labor, husband dead from snakebite 2 days prior, and her about to follow. I was young, stupid, scared, kept riding, told myself it wasn't my business, that I couldn't help anyway. His hand clenched into a fist at his side. Found out later from a traveler that she died. Her and the baby both. Took them 3 days. Clara's throat tightened. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? He turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes was raw and old and deep. Maybe I couldn't have saved them. Probably couldn't have. But I didn't try. Didn't even stop to check. That's the part that stays with you. Not what you couldn't do, but what you didn't even try to do. So this is penance? This is not walking past when someone needs help. He came back to the fire and began cleaning up the remains of breakfast, movements sharp with suppressed emotion. If that's penance, so be it. The children had finished eating and were sitting in a small cluster, talking quietly among themselves. Clara watched Emma gently rebraid Lily's hair while Thomas showed Samuel a small rock he'd found that looked vaguely like a horse. They looked better, not healthy, not safe, but better, like children again instead of dying things. What happens now? Clara asked. Where do we go? There's a way station about 15 miles northwest. Used to be a Butterfield stage stop before the war. Man named Henderson runs it now, him and his wife. They're good people. They'll have food, water, real shelter. We can get there by tomorrow night if we start now and take it easy. 15 miles. Clara looked down at her torn feet, then at the children. Can we make it? You'll ride in the wagon. The children who can walk will walk for short stretches to keep their strength up, then ride when they tire. We'll stop frequently. Take water breaks. It'll be slow, but we'll make it. And you'll walk the whole way, leading the horse? I've walked farther. There was something in his voice, a weariness that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion and everything to do with the weight of miles and years and choices that couldn't be unmade. Claire wanted to ask more, wanted to understand this strange, damaged man who'd appeared out of nowhere to save them, but the baby kicked and reminded her that understanding could wait. Survival came first. They broke camp with surprising efficiency. Bo doused the fire thoroughly, scattering the ashes and covering them with sand. He repacked his gear, checked the wagon wheels and axle, and redistributed the children's meager belongings to balance the weight. Clara tried to help, but he waved her off. You're 7 months pregnant and half dead from dehydration. Sit down before you fall down. I can help. I'm not helpless. Didn't say you were helpless. Said you were injured and pregnant. There's a difference. He cinched down a rope one-handed, the knot coming together with practiced ease. Besides, this is what I do. Let me do it. They started moving as the sun climbed higher, Bo leading Red with steady patience while the wagon creaked and groaned behind. Clara rode on the bench with baby Grace sleeping in her lap. Emma and Thomas walked beside the wagon for the first hour, their small legs pumping to keep up. Samuel and Lily rode inside, still too weak for much exertion. The landscape shifted gradually from scattered boulders to harder-packed sand dotted with scrub brush and the occasional skeletal tree. It was still desert, still brutal, but it felt less immediately hostile than the open wasteland they'd crossed yesterday. Here, at least, there were signs of life. A lizard darting across the sand, a hawk circling high overhead, tracks in the dust that suggested coyotes or jackrabbits. They stopped after 2 hours. Bo distributed water carefully, making sure each child drank exactly the amount he specified and no more. When Thomas tried to gulp his share, Bo physically pulled the canteen away. I said small sips. You want to make yourself sick? But I'm thirsty. We're all thirsty. Dessert's made of thirsty. But your stomach's been empty too long. You flood it too fast, it'll reject everything. Then you're worse off than before. Thomas's lower lip trembled. I don't like you. Don't have to like me. Just have to listen to me. Bo's voice was firm but not unkind. You want to see tomorrow? You follow the rules. Understand? The boy nodded reluctantly and accepted the canteen back, this time taking the tiny controlled sips Bo had specified. Clara saw the way Bo watched each child drink, counting seconds, monitoring intake with the vigilance of someone who'd seen what happened when things went wrong in the desert. You must have been a good soldier, she said quietly. Bo glanced at her. What makes you say that? The way you think ahead. Plan. Make sure everyone follows orders. Being a good soldier is about following orders, not giving them. I was mediocre at that at best. He took a drink himself, just 3 swallows, then stoppered the canteen. This is different. This is just keeping people alive. Don't need to be a soldier for that. Just need to give a damn. They walked on. The sun beat down with relentless intensity. Clara's feet throbbed even though she wasn't walking on them. The baby was restless, kicking and shifting, and she found herself talking to it silently. Just a little longer. Just hold on a little longer. We're going to be somewhere safe soon. Around midday, Emma stumbled. She caught herself, kept walking, but Clara saw the way her steps had become mechanical, automatic, like her body was moving without her mind's full participation. Mr. Riker, Clara called. Emma needs to rest. Bo stopped immediately. He looked back at Emma, took in her glazed eyes and swaying stance, and nodded once. All right, everyone in the wagon? We'll walk straight through to the next good shade spot. But I can keep going, Emma protested weakly. I'm not tired. You're exhausted. Get in the wagon. Thomas is younger and he's still walking. Thomas is also half your size and using half the energy. Stop arguing and get in the wagon. Emma's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be strong. I'm trying to help. Something in Bo's expression softened. Not much, just a slight easing around his eyes. He knelt down to Emma's level, his one hand coming to rest gently on her shoulder. Listen to me. Being strong doesn't mean walking until you collapse. Being strong means knowing when to rest so you can keep going later. You understand? You're not weak for being tired. You're smart for recognizing it. Emma sniffled and nodded. Yes, sir. Good girl. Now get in that wagon before I have to carry you, and neither of us wants that because I've only got one arm and you're too big to carry comfortably. That got a tiny smile. Emma climbed into the wagon with Thomas's help, and they continued on. The sun reached its zenith and began its slow arc downward. The temperature didn't drop. If anything, it seemed to intensify, the heat radiating off the sand in visible waves. Clara's head swam. She clutched baby Grace tighter, feeling the infant's fever burning through the thin cloth of her dress. Grace needed real medicine. They all did. Proper food, clean water, shelter that didn't consist of torn canvas and prayer. How much farther? She asked. 8 miles, maybe 9. We'll make camp before dark, push on tomorrow morning. And if we don't make it, if Henderson Station isn't there anymore? It's there. I was through there 6 months back. Henderson and his wife aren't going anywhere. That station's their life. Bo adjusted his hat against the glare. But even if they weren't there, the well is. Water's what matters most. We get to that well. We'll survive. The certainty in his voice was oddly comforting. This wasn't hope or optimism. It was knowledge, hard-earned and tested. They found shade around 3 in the afternoon, an overhang of rock that created a blessed pocket of coolness. Bo unhitched Red and let the horse rest while he passed around food and water. The children ate dried biscuits and jerky with the focused intensity of small animals. No one spoke much. They were too tired, too heat-drunk. Clara tried to feed Grace some more of the chamomile tea, but the baby wouldn't take it. She just lay limply in Clara's arms, her breathing too fast and too shallow. "She's getting worse," Clara said, hearing the panic rising in her own voice. "Bo, she's getting worse." He came over and examined the baby carefully. His face remained neutral, but Clara saw the tightness around his jaw. Her body's fighting the fever, using up what little resources she has. He touched Grace's forehead with the back of his fingers. "We need to get her cooled down and get fluids into her. If she makes it through tonight, she'll have a chance at Henderson's." "If?" Bo met her eyes. "I'm not going to lie to you, Mrs. Dunn. She's bad, real bad. But I've seen people come back from worse. We do everything we can, give her every advantage, and then we hope." Hope. Such a small word. Such an impossible thing to hold on to in this place. "What do I do?" Clara asked. "Keep her in the shade. Keep trying to get liquid into her, even if it's just drops. And talk to her. Babies know voices. Let her know she's not alone." So Clara sat in the shade with Grace cradled against her chest, dipping a cloth in water and letting drops fall on the baby's cracked lips, talking in a low, steady stream about Missouri and green grass and cool streams and all the things that existed somewhere beyond this burning wasteland. She talked until her voice was hoarse, until the words stopped making sense, until she was just making sounds that meant "you're here, you're loved, you're not alone." The other children watched with solemn eyes. They understood, in the way children do, that Grace might not see another sunset. They'd seen death too recently not to recognize its approach. As the afternoon light began to fade, Bo stood and surveyed the sky. Clara saw his expression change, a subtle shift from watchful to alert. "What is it?" she asked. "Storm coming." Clara looked up. The sky was still blue, still clear. "I don't see—" "Not yet, but you will. Wind's changing, smells different. Storm's rolling in, probably hit around midnight." He began moving with sudden urgency, repacking gear, checking the wagon. "We need to find better shelter. But you said we'd camp here." "That was before I knew about the storm. This overhang won't be enough. Wind'll come straight through. Rain'll flood this spot. We need walls." "There aren't any walls out here." "Then we make some." Bo was already hitching Red back to the wagon. "There's a formation about a mile north. Saw it from the high ground this morning. Rocks form a natural alcove, 3 sides protected. We can make it work." They moved quickly, the children sensing the urgency and staying quiet. The wind did start to pick up, subtle at first, then stronger, carrying with it the scent of rain and ozone. The sky remained clear, but Clara could feel the change now, a pressure in the air, an electricity that made her skin prickle. The mile felt like 10. Red plodded steadily forward, the wagon wheels grinding through sand that was starting to blow in small eddies and swirls. Emma held Grace now, freeing Clara's hands to grip the wagon bench as the wind strengthened. Thomas and the other children huddled in the back, eyes wide. Then Clara saw it. The rock formation Bo had mentioned. It rose from the desert like a small fortress, 3 massive slabs of stone arranged in a rough U-shape with the open side facing south, away from the direction the storm would come. It wasn't perfect, but it was shelter. Bo guided them into the alcove and immediately began working. He unhitched Red and secured the horse in the most protected corner, then turned to the wagon. With quick, economical movements, he began unloading everything they didn't immediately need and arranging it to form windbreaks at the open end of the U. "Children out," he ordered. "Stay close to the back wall where the rock overhangs." They obeyed without question, Clara included. She pressed herself against the stone with the children clustered around her, watching as Bo transformed their meager supplies into something resembling a shelter. He used the wagon itself as a windbreak, positioning it to block the worst of what would come. He stretched canvas from the wagon to the rock wall, creating a partial roof. He gathered every loose piece of brush and wood he could find and piled it strategically to serve as additional barriers. The sky finally began to darken, clouds boiling up from the northwest with unnatural speed. Lightning flickered in the distance, too far away yet for thunder. "Is it going to be bad?" Emma asked quietly. Bo paused in his work, looking at the approaching storm with the assessment of someone who'd weathered many. "It's going to be loud and wet and scary. But we're going to be all right. Just stay together, stay under the overhang, and don't go wandering off into the dark. Understand? All the children nodded. Good. Mrs. Dunn, you and the baby go as far back against the rock as you can. Rest of you, surround her. Body heat's going to matter when the temperature drops. They arranged themselves as instructed. Clara settled with her back against stone that still held the warmth of the day, Grace in her arms, the other children pressing close. Bo draped his horse blanket over them again, tucking it around the edges. The first fat drops of rain hit like bullets, kicking up dust where they landed. Then the sky opened up. Clara had seen storms before, Missouri thunderstorms that rolled across the plains with sound and fury. But this was different. Desert rain fell like it was trying to make up for months of absence all at once. The noise was deafening, a roar that drowned out everything else. Lightning split the sky every few seconds, turning the world blue-white and stark. Thunder followed so close it felt like the earth was cracking apart. The canvas bow had stretched, flapped, and snapped in the wind, threatening to tear loose. Water poured down the rock walls on either side of them, creating instant waterfalls. The wagon rocked and groaned, Red whinnying nervously despite being protected. And through it all, Bo was outside, moving in the storm, checking tie-downs, adjusting the canvas, wrestling with wind that seemed determined to tear everything away. "He's going to get hurt!" Emma shouted over the roar. Clara watched as a particularly violent gust caught the canvas, ripping one end free. Bo lunged for it with his one hand, caught it, and Clara saw him wrap the rope around his forearm, using his body weight to hold it down. The wind pulled at him, rain lashing his face, but he held on. Another tie point snapped. The whole canvas structure threatened to come down. Without thinking, Bo threw himself flat on top of it, using his entire body as an anchor. He lay there in the mud and rain, holding the shelter together through sheer stubborn will. "Mama, he's going to freeze," Thomas said, his voice small and scared. "I know, baby. Why doesn't he come inside with us?" Clara watched Bo through the sheeting rain, watched him adjust his position to better secure a flapping corner, watched him endure what must have been bone-chilling cold and brutal wind without a sound of complaint. Because if he comes inside, the shelter might not hold. And if the shelter doesn't hold, we get wet. And if we get wet in this cold... Clara didn't finish the sentence. The children understood anyway. Samuel, who had been silent for so long, suddenly spoke. "He's saving us. Again." "Yes, he is. But why? He doesn't know us." It was the same question Clara had asked herself a dozen times. She looked at the children huddled around her, orphaned, lost, forgotten. She thought about Bo's story of the woman he'd ridden past, the guilt he carried like a stone in his chest. She remembered the way he'd looked at baby Grace, the gentleness in his rough hands when he tended to Samuel's fever. "I think," Clara said slowly, "that Mr. Riker has seen too much death, and he's decided he won't allow any more if he can help it, even if it costs him everything." "That's stupid," Lily said softly. "He could die." "Yes, he could. And that would be stupid." Clara pulled the little girl closer. "Maybe. Or maybe it's the only thing that makes sense in a world that stopped making sense a long time ago." The storm raged for hours. At some point, Lily crawled forward to the edge of their shelter where rain sheeted down like a curtain. She cupped her small hands and caught rainwater, then crawled back to where Bo lay spread eagle on the canvas, fighting the wind. "Mr. Riker!" she called over the storm. "Mr. Riker, drink!" He turned his head slightly, saw the water in her hands, and managed a nod. Lily held her cupped hands to his mouth and let him drink the rainwater she'd caught. It couldn't have been more than a few swallows, but Bo's expression softened. "Thank you, little one. Now get back with the others before you catch your death." "Are you going to be okay?" "I've been through worse." "That doesn't answer my question." Even through the storm, Clara saw Bo's brief smile. "Smart girl, yet. Yes, I'll be okay. Now go." Lily retreated to the safety of the group. Samuel followed her lead, and soon all the children were taking turns catching rainwater and bringing it to Bo. It was a small thing, insignificant really, but Clara saw what it meant. These children who had lost everything, who had every reason to be selfish with survival, were choosing instead to care for the man who was caring for them. Around midnight, the worst of the storm passed. The rain continued, but the wind died down. The lightning moved off to the east. The thunder became a distant rumble. Bo finally crawled out from under the canvas, soaked to the bone and shaking with cold. Emma immediately held out the horse blanket. "You need this more than us now." "I'm fine." "You're shaking. Take it." I said, "Please, Mr. Riker." Emma's voice broke. "Please, just take it. We can't lose you too." The last word hung in the air, too. Too, like the father she'd lost. Too, like the mother of the orphaned children. Too, like everyone who'd left and never come back. Bo stared at Emma for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and accepted the blanket. He wrapped it around his shoulders and came to sit against the rock wall beside them, his breathing ragged, his body still trembling. Baby Grace chose that moment to cry, a thin, reedy sound but stronger than before. Clara checked her forehead, still warm, but not burning. The fever had broken. "She's going to make it," Clara whispered. "Bo, I think she's going to make it." He nodded, too exhausted to speak. His eyes were closing despite his obvious effort to stay alert. "Sleep," Clara said gently. "We'll keep watch. You've done enough." "Can't. Need to. But his body had other plans. Within seconds, Bo Riker, stubborn, damaged, impossibly brave, was unconscious, his breathing evening out into the deep rhythm of utter exhaustion. The children looked at each other, then at Clara. Without anyone saying a word, they rearranged themselves to include Bo in their huddle of warmth. Thomas leaned against his side. Lily curled up near his feet. Emma draped the edge of the blanket more securely over his shoulders. Clara watched them all. These broken pieces of families, these remnants of tragedy, gathering together in the aftermath of the storm. And she thought about what Bo had said earlier. "This is not walking past when someone needs help." "Thank you," she whispered to the sleeping man. "Thank you for not walking past us." The rain continued its gentle patter. The night was cold, but no longer brutal. And for the first time since the bandits had destroyed her world, Clara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were all going to survive this. She looked down at Grace, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. She felt the baby in her belly shift and settle. She saw the children breathing steady and calm around her, and she watched Bo Riker sleep the sleep of someone who'd given everything and somehow found it was enough. Tomorrow they would reach Henderson Station. Tomorrow they would find real safety. But tonight, in a rocky alcove in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by the remnants of a storm and the warmth of shared survival, Clara Dunn understood something fundamental. Sometimes salvation didn't come as a miracle. Sometimes it came as a stubborn man with one arm who simply refused to let anyone else die on his watch. And sometimes that was miracle enough. Dawn broke clean and cold, the storm leaving the desert scrubbed and glistening. Clara woke to find Bo already up, moving stiffly as he rekindled the fire with wood that had stayed dry under the wagon. His clothes were still damp, his hair plastered to his head, but his eyes were alert and focused. "Morning," he said quietly when he noticed she was awake. "We'll eat quick and move out. Henderson Station is maybe 4 hours from here if we don't dawdle." Clara shifted carefully, trying not to wake the children still piled around her like puppies. Grace stirred in her arms but didn't cry, just made small huffing sounds against Clara's chest. The baby's fever was completely gone, her skin cool and dry. "She looks better," Bo observed, glancing over. Color's back in her face. "The storm. I think the cool air helped break the fever. That and her own stubbornness. Little fighter, that one." He poured water from his canteen into the pot to heat. "Storm's a blessing and a curse out here, dangerous while it's happening, but it fills the water holes and cools things down. Nature's way of evening the scales." The children began to wake one by one, stretching and yawning. Thomas sat up and immediately looked for Bo, his small face relaxing when he found the man by the fire. "You're still here," the boy said. Bo raised an eyebrow. "Where'd you think I'd be?" "Papa left and didn't come back. Thought maybe you would too." The words landed like stones. Bo's jaw worked for a moment before he spoke. "Your papa didn't choose to leave you, son. Sometimes life takes choices away from us. But I'm here by choice, and I'm staying until you're all safe. That's a promise." "How do we know you'll keep it?" Because I've never broken a promise in my life, and I'm too old and too tired to start now. Bo held the boy's gaze steadily. You're going to have to trust me, Thomas. I know that's hard. But sometimes trust is all we've got. Thomas considered this seriously, then nodded. Okay, I'll trust you. Good man. They ate a cold breakfast of dried biscuits and water, then broke camp with practiced efficiency. Bo checked Red's hooves and legs carefully, making sure the storm hadn't caused any injuries, then hitched the horse to the wagon. The children piled in without being asked, understanding now that their energy needed to be conserved for when it mattered most. The landscape had changed overnight. Where yesterday everything had been dust and death, today small green shoots pushed up through the sand, and the air smelled of creosote and wet earth. Puddles dotted the ground, already shrinking under the climbing sun, but still offering proof that water existed in this place, that life could return even after the harshest drought. They made good time. Bo walked with a slight limp that Clara suspected came from lying on wet ground all night, but he never slowed, never complained. Red plodded along steadily, the wagon rolling easier over sand that had been packed down by the rain. Around mid-morning, Clara spotted something on the horizon. At first she thought it was a mirage, but as they drew closer, it resolved into solid shapes, a cluster of buildings, a windmill turning lazily, the distinctive outline of a water tower. Is that it? Emma asked, leaning forward. Is that Henderson's place? That's it, Bo confirmed. See the windmill? That's pumping water up from an underground spring. Station's got the only reliable water source for 50 miles in any direction. That's why the stage line put a stop there, and why Henderson's been able to keep it going. The children's excitement was palpable. Even Samuel, still quiet and withdrawn, sat up straighter to get a better view. They were close. So close to safety that Clara could almost taste it. That's when she saw the rider. He came from the east, moving fast, his horse kicking up a spray of water from the puddles. At first Clara thought he might be from the station, coming out to greet them, but something about the way he rode, aggressive, purposeful, made her uneasy. Bo saw him too. His hand went to the rifle secured to Red's saddle, though he didn't draw it, just rested his palm on the stock, ready. The rider slowed as he approached, pulling his horse to a walk about 20 yards out. He was younger than Bo, maybe 30, with slicked back dark hair and clothes that were too clean and too fine for honest desert travel. His saddle was expensive leather, his boots polished, his hat pristine. Everything about him screamed money and city and the kind of man who'd never missed a meal in his life. "Morning," the man called out, his voice smooth and friendly. Too friendly. "Name's Miles Burrow. You folks heading to Henderson Station?" "We are," Bo said carefully. "That a problem?" "No problem at all, just making conversation." Miles walked his horse closer, his eyes cataloging everything, the wagon, the children, Clara's obvious pregnancy, Bo's missing arm. "Looks like you've had some trouble." "Nothing we can't handle." "I can see that. Still, rough thing, traveling through this country with young ones." His gaze lingered on the children in a way that made Clara's skin crawl. "Those all yours?" "They're under my protection," Bo said, and there was steel in his voice now. "That's all that matters." Of course, just curious." Miles smiled, showing too many teeth. "Actually, might be I can help you folks out. I'm a representative for the Territorial Children's Aid Society. We place orphaned children with good Christian families back east. I've got authorization to take custody of any unaccompanied minors I come across." Clara's blood went cold. "These children aren't unaccompanied. They're with me." "You their mother, ma'am?" "Two of them, yes. The others are orphans then. Exactly the kind of children my organization helps." Miles reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a sheaf of papers. "I've got all the proper documentation right here, signed by the territorial governor himself." "Those children aren't going anywhere," Clara said, her voice shaking with fury and fear. "They've been through enough. They're staying with me." "Ma'am, I understand you've formed an attachment, but you have to think about what's best for them. You're pregnant, clearly struggling. How are you going to care for 5 children? 7, with your own 2 and the one on the way? These orphans need proper homes with people who can provide for them." "We're providing for them just fine," Bo said quietly. Miles's eyes narrowed as he looked at Bo. "And you are?" Someone who doesn't take kindly to strangers trying to separate families. This isn't a family. It's a desperate woman collecting strays she can't feed. Miles's friendly veneer was cracking now, showing something uglier underneath. I'm trying to help here. These children deserve better than dying in the desert. They're not dying. We're 4 hours from shelter and safety. Henderson Station, please. That's no place for children long term. What's your plan after that? Drag them across the desert until you all drop dead? Miles shook his head. No, my way is better. I'll take the 3 orphans now, get them back to civilization, find them real families. You keep your own children and everyone wins. Nobody's taking these children, Clara said, and she was surprised by the strength in her own voice. They've lost their parents. They've watched people die. They've walked through hell and survived it. And you want to tear them away from the only stability they have left? From the other children they've bonded with? No, absolutely not. Ma'am, I don't think you understand. I have legal authority here. Then you'll have to use it, Bo said, and his hand was still on that rifle. Because these children aren't going anywhere without a fight. For a long moment, Miles just stared at Bo. Then he smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. I see. Well, we'll just have to see what the law says about this, won't we? He tucked the papers back into his saddlebag. I'll be at Henderson Station. We can sort this out properly there, with witnesses and everything above board. But make no mistake, those orphans are coming with me, one way or another. He turned his horse and rode off toward the station at a gallop. Clara watched him go, her heart hammering against her ribs. Bo, she said urgently. He can't just take them. Can he? Tell me he can't just take them. Bo's face was grim. Depends on if those papers are real. Territorial government's been pushing for orphan relocation programs. If he's got legitimate authorization... He trailed off, not finishing the thought. What do we do? We get to Henderson's. Get you and the children inside. Then we figure out if those papers are worth the ink they're printed on. Bo started walking again, faster now. Emma, you listening? Yes, sir, came the girl's voice from the wagon. I need you to do something for me. When we get to Henderson's, I want you to take the little ones and stay with Mrs. Henderson. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Don't let any of the young ones come out either. Understand? You think there's going to be trouble. I think there might be. And if there is, I need to know you're all safe and out of the way. What about Mama? Your Mama's going to be with Mrs. Henderson too. This is men's business, and sometimes men's business gets ugly. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to say she could help, but the baby kicked hard and reminded her that she was 7 months pregnant and barely recovered from near death. She would be a liability in any confrontation, not an asset. The station grew larger as they approached. It was bigger than Clara had expected. A main building with a covered porch, a barn, several outbuildings, and that beautiful windmill pumping water into the raised tank. Horses stood in a corral, and she could see washing hanging on a line behind the main house, flapping gently in the breeze. Normal. It looked so blessedly normal that Clara wanted to cry. A woman emerged from the main building as they pulled up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with iron gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and a face that looked like it had been carved from the same rock as the desert. But her eyes were kind. Bo Riker, she called out. Thought the desert had finally claimed you. Been 6 months since you came through. Takes more than desert to kill me, Martha. Bo climbed down from the wagon, moving to help Clara. Got some folks here who need help. Woman and 6 children, been through hell and back. Martha's eyes swept over them, taking in their condition with the practiced assessment of someone who'd seen plenty of desperate travelers. Lord have mercy, get them inside. I've got stew on and beds made up. Children look half-starved. There's a complication, Bo said quietly. Man rode in ahead of us. Calls himself Miles Burrow. Says he's with some Children's Aid Society, wants to take the orphaned children. Martha's expression hardened. He's inside talking to John right now. Been here about 10 minutes, showing papers and making demands. She looked at the children. Which ones are orphans? The 3 youngest, Lily, Samuel, and baby Grace. And you want to keep them together. They need to stay together. They've bonded. Separating them now would be cruel. Martha nodded once, decisively. Then we won't separate them. Come on inside. Let's see what this city slicker thinks he can do on our land. She herded Clara and the children into the station house. The interior was simple but clean. Wooden floors, whitewashed walls, a large common room with a fireplace and long table. The smell of cooking meat made Clara's stomach clench with hunger so fierce it was almost painful. A man sat at the table with Miles Burrow, older than Martha, with a weathered face and steady eyes. This had to be John Henderson. He looked up as they entered, his gaze moving from the children to Clara to Bo. "Bo?" he said with a nod. "John." Miles stood up, that too bright smile back on his face. "Ah, here they are. Mrs. Dunn, children, please come in. Mr. Henderson and I were just discussing the best way to proceed." "The best way to proceed," Martha said sharply, "is to feed these poor babies and get them into beds. They look like death warmed over." Of course, but there are legal matters to address first." Miles gestured to the papers spread on the table. "Mr. Henderson, as I was saying, I have full authorization from the territorial government to take custody of orphaned minors. The 3 children in question, Lily, Samuel, and Grace, have no living parents. Therefore, they fall under my jurisdiction." "Show me those papers," Bo said. Miles hesitated, then pushed them across the table. Bo picked them up with his one hand, his eyes scanning the text. Clara watched his face, trying to read his expression. It remained carefully neutral. "These are dated 6 months ago," Bo said finally. "So, they're still valid." "Signed by Acting Governor Mitchell." "That's correct." "Mitchell was removed from office 4 months ago on corruption charges." Bo looked up, his gray eyes cold. "So either you didn't know that, which makes you incompetent, or you did know, and you're hoping we didn't, which makes you a liar." Miles's face flushed. That doesn't invalidate the authorization. The program itself is still... The program might be legitimate somewhere," John Henderson cut in, his voice calm but firm. "But these papers aren't worth the paper they're printed on. Not anymore." "You don't have the authority to make that determination." "On my land? I've got all the authority I need." John stood up, and despite being older, he was still an imposing figure. "Now, I suggest you finish your coffee and be on your way. These folks are staying here until they're recovered, and those children are staying with the woman who's been caring for them." Miles's composure cracked completely. His hand moved toward his coat, and Clara's breath caught. Was he going for a weapon? "I wouldn't," Bo said softly. He hadn't moved, hadn't drawn his rifle, but something in his voice made Miles freeze. "You want to walk away from this. Trust me. You're interfering with official business." "There's no official business here. Just a con man with fake papers trying to steal children." Bo's voice was flat, factual. "Question is, why? What's the real game here, Burrow? You selling these kids to someone? Rich folks back east willing to pay for white orphans, no questions asked?" The truth must have shown on Miles's face, because Martha gasped, and John's expression turned thunderous. "Get off my land," John said, his voice low and dangerous. "Right now, before I forget I'm a Christian man and do something I might regret." "You're making a mistake," Miles hissed. "All of you. I have connections, resources. You think you can just—" The sound of multiple horses approaching cut him off. Everyone turned toward the door as it opened. 3 men walked in, and Clara's heart sank when she saw the badges on their chests. Lawmen. Real ones, by the look of them. "Afternoon," the lead man said. He was perhaps 40, with a thick mustache and tired eyes. "Name's Deputy Marshal Hawthorne. Got word there might be a situation here regarding some children?" Miles's smile returned, triumphant. "Marshal, thank God. These people are trying to prevent me from carrying out my legal duties. I have authorization to—" "We know what you have," Hawthorne interrupted, "or what you claim to have. That's actually why we're here." He pulled out his own papers, wanted posters. Clara's blood ran cold until she saw whose face was on them. Miles Burrow, wanted for trafficking in stolen children. Reward, $500. "You're under arrest, Burrow," Hawthorne said calmly. "Been tracking you for 3 months. Finally got a tip you were working this territory." He looked at Bo. "You must be the one who sent word?" Bo shook his head. "Wasn't me." "Was me," Martha said. "Miles Burrow came through here 2 months back, trying the same trick. Took him for what he was right off. Sent word to the territorial marshal's office. Figured if he was working this area, he'd come back eventually." Miles's face had gone white. "This is a mistake. I'm a legitimate, you're a thief and a slaver, Hawthorne said bluntly. We've found 6 families you stole children from, sold them to wealthy buyers back east who wanted orphans but didn't want to go through proper channels. You made them think it was legal, charged them a fortune, and left the kids stranded if the buyers changed their minds. He nodded to his deputies. Take him. They grabbed Miles by the arms. He struggled, shouting about lawyers and rights and mistakes, but the deputies hauled him outside without ceremony. Hawthorne stayed behind, his eyes on the children huddled near Clara. These the ones he was after? Yes, Clara said, finding her voice. But they're not going anywhere. They're staying with me. Hawthorne studied her, pregnant, exhausted, fierce. Then he looked at Bo, at John and Martha, at the children themselves. Ma'am, I'm not here to take anyone's children. I'm here to stop the man who does. He touched his hat. You all have a good day. Try to recover from whatever hell you've been through. He left. Through the window, Clara watched them load Miles onto a horse and ride off, the would-be kidnappers' protests fading into the distance. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Samuel, silent. Samuel, who hadn't spoken more than a handful of words in days, walked over to Bo and wrapped his small arms around the man's legs. I thought you'd let him take us, the boy whispered. I thought you'd let him take us, and we'd never see each other again. Bo's one hand came down to rest on Samuel's head, his expression cracking for just a moment to show the emotion underneath. No one's taking you, not while I'm breathing. Promise? Promise. Samuel sobbed once, then again, his small body shaking with the release of fear that had been building since his parents died. Lily joined him, then Thomas, then Emma, all of them clustering around Bo like he was a lighthouse in a storm. Bo stood there, one arm trying to hold them all, his face a study in awkward tenderness. Martha cleared her throat, her own eyes suspiciously bright. Right. Well, let's get some food into these babies. John, help me set the table. Mrs. Dunn, you sit down before you fall down. Bo, go get cleaned up. You look like something the cat dragged in. The tension broke. People moved. Clara found herself guided to a chair at the table, baby Grace still in her arms. Martha brought bowls of stew, actual meat and vegetables floating in rich broth, and fresh bread that was still warm. The children attacked the food with desperate hunger, barely pausing to chew. Slow down, Bo cautioned from where he stood by the water basin, washing his face and hands. Your bellies aren't ready for that much that fast. But even he couldn't hide his smile as he watched them eat. Real food. Safety. The danger passed. Clara took a bite of stew and nearly wept at the taste. When was the last time she'd eaten something that wasn't dried or stale or rationed? When was the last time any of them had? Thank you, she said to Martha. I don't know how to... We can't pay you, but somehow we'll... Hush, Martha said firmly. Payment's already been made. Bo Riker helped John fix our windmill last time he came through. Worked 3 days in the hot sun with one arm and never complained once. This is just returning the favor. Bo came to the table and sat down, accepting his own bowl from Martha. He ate slowly, methodically, his eyes constantly moving to check on the children. John Henderson leaned back in his chair, studying the unlikely family gathered around his table. So what's the plan now? You can stay here a few days, rest up, but eventually you'll need to figure out your next move. Clara hadn't thought that far ahead. Everything had been focused on just surviving, on making it to safety. But John was right. What came next? I need to get these children to California, she said slowly. That was the plan originally. My husband and I were heading there to start fresh. He's gone now, but the plan doesn't have to die with him. California's still a long way off, John said gently. And you're 7 months pregnant. Forgive me for being blunt, but you're in no condition to make that journey. Not through this country. Then what am I supposed to do? Stay here? I can't impose on you forever. There's land about 5 miles north of here, Bo said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Used to be a homestead. Family died of fever 2 winters back. Place has been sitting empty since. It's rough, needs work, but the bones are good. Creek runs through the property year-round, which is rare in this territory. Soil's decent for a kitchen garden if you know what you're doing. What are you suggesting? Clara asked. I'm suggesting you could stay. Make a home there. Raise these children somewhere they can put down roots instead of always running. He met her eyes. California's a dream, Clara. Dreams are good, but sometimes survival's better. I can't run a homestead alone. Not pregnant, not with 6 children. You wouldn't be alone. The words hung in the air. Clara stared at Beau, trying to understand what he was offering. I don't understand, she said finally. I'm saying I'll help. Stay on the property, get the place fixed up and running. Make sure you and the children have what you need. He looked down at his bowl. I've been drifting for 3 years. Might be time to stop drifting. But why? Why would you do that? Beau was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. Because I spent 3 years trying to outrun what I saw in the war, trying to forget the things I did and didn't do, trying to convince myself I was better off alone. He looked up, his gray eyes meeting hers. But I'm tired, Clara. Tired of running, tired of being alone, tired of walking past people who need help because I'm too scared to get involved again. He glanced at the children, all of them watching him with wide eyes. Maybe I can't be the man I was before the war. That man's gone. But maybe I can be something else, something better, a man who stays, a man who helps, a man who... He trailed off, struggling for words. A man who builds instead of just surviving. Emma spoke up, her voice small but clear. You mean you'd be our pa? Beau flinched at the word. I don't know about that. Your pa's irreplaceable, little one. No one's trying to take his place. But I could be someone who looks after you, someone who makes sure you grow up safe. That sounds like a pa to me, Thomas said seriously. Martha had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wet. John was smiling, the kind of smile that came from seeing something right happen in a world that was usually wrong. Clara felt the baby kick inside her, felt the weight of 6 living children around her and one about to be born, felt the impossible choice being laid before her. Accept Beau's help and tie her life to a man she'd known for 3 days? Or refuse and try to make it alone, 7 months pregnant with 6 children in the desert? It wasn't really a choice at all. I'm going to have conditions, she said finally. Beau nodded. Fair enough. You don't drink to excess. You don't raise a hand to any of these children ever. You don't make promises you can't keep. And if you decide to leave, you tell us first. No disappearing in the night. Agreed. And Clara hesitated, then pushed forward. And you teach them. Reading, writing, numbers. How to survive out here. They've lost their parents, but they don't have to lose their futures. I can do that. Clara looked at the children. Emma's hopeful face, Thomas's cautious trust, the orphans who'd already been abandoned once and were terrified it would happen again. Baby Grace sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. All right, she said, we'll try your plan, the homestead. Building something instead of running toward a dream. A slow smile spread across Beau's face. The first real smile Clara had seen from him. It transformed him, made him look younger, less careworn. Good, he said simply. But as if the universe wanted to remind them that nothing came easy, Clara felt a sudden sharp pain lance through her abdomen. She gasped, her hand flying to her belly. Clara? Beau was on his feet instantly. What's wrong? I don't know, I just felt... Another pain, stronger this time. Clara's vision blurred at the edges. Something's wrong. The baby... Martha! Beau's voice cracked with urgency. Something's happening. Martha rushed over, her experienced hands checking Clara's forehead, her pulse. She's burning up. John, help me get her to the back room. Beau, keep the children out here. This isn't something they need to see. What's happening? Emma cried. What's wrong with Mama? Your Mama's going to be fine, Martha said with more confidence than Clara felt. But the baby's coming early. We need to move fast. Everything became a blur of motion and pain. John and Martha half-carried Clara to a small room at the back of the station. They laid her on a narrow bed, and Martha began barking orders at John. Hot water, clean cloths, her medical kit from the chest in the other room. Through the open door, Clara could hear Beau's voice, calm and steady, talking to the children. Your Mama's strong. Mrs. Henderson knows what she's doing. Best thing you can do is stay out here and pray if you're the praying type. But she was fine just a minute ago, Emma sobbed. Sometimes babies come when they're ready, not when we expect them. It's going to be all right, Emma. I promise you, it's going to be all right. Clara wanted to call out, wanted to tell her daughter she was okay, but another contraction ripped through her and she couldn't do anything but gasp and grip the sheets. Early babies are risky, Martha said quietly to John, not realizing Clara could hear. And she's been through hell. Her body's already pushed past its limits. She's a fighter, John replied. I can see it in her eyes. Fighting doesn't always win. The pain intensified. Clara felt like her body was tearing itself apart from the inside. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She'd delivered Emma and Thomas both, difficult births, but nothing like this. Nothing this violent. Something's wrong, she gasped. Martha, something's wrong. I know, honey, I know. Just breathe. We're going to get through this. Hours blurred together. Clara screamed until her voice was raw. Martha worked with grim determination, her hands gentle but firm. Outside, thunder rumbled, another storm rolling in, or maybe just the echo of the first one that hadn't quite finished with them yet. At some point, Beau appeared in the doorway. Martha tried to shoo him away, but he pushed past her. I've delivered calves, he said shortly, and one foal. If you need an extra pair of hand, I can help. This isn't a barn, Beau Riker. No, it's not. It's Clara fighting for her life and her baby's life. And if I can help, I'm going to. He came to Clara's side, his one hand finding hers. You hear me, Clara? You're not doing this alone. I promised I'd help. That includes this. Clara gripped his hand with strength born of desperation. The pain was beyond anything she'd imagined, beyond anything she could endure. But Beau's hand was solid, real, anchoring her to the world when everything else was spinning apart. I can't, she sobbed. I can't do this. Yes, you can. You pulled a wagon through the desert with 5 children. You survived bandits and heat stroke and a storm. This is just one more thing to survive. I'm scared. I know. But fear doesn't mean you can't do it. Just means it matters. His gray eyes held hers. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Clara Dunn. Don't you dare give up now. Martha's voice cut through the haze. Clara, next contraction. You need to push, hard as you can. This baby needs to come out now. Clara pushed, screamed, pushed again. The world narrowed to pain and pressure and Beau's voice in her ear, counting, encouraging, refusing to let her quit. That's it. Again, you're doing it. Almost there. I can see the head, Martha said. One more push. Give me one more push. Clara gathered every scrap of strength she had left, every ounce of stubborn will that had kept her alive through the past week of hell, and she pushed with everything she was. And then suddenly, impossibly, the pain eased. A tiny, furious wail split the air. It's a boy, Martha said, her voice thick with emotion. Clara, you have a son. Through tears and exhaustion, Clara saw Martha lift a tiny red-faced infant, all flailing limbs and angry cries at being thrust into the world 2 months early. He was so small, too small. But his lungs worked, and his cry was strong, and he was alive. Let me hold him, Clara whispered. Please. Martha cleaned the baby quickly and placed him on Clara's chest. He was warm and sticky and perfect. Clara looked down at this tiny miracle, this life that had survived against all odds, and she started to cry in earnest. Hello, little one, she whispered. Welcome to the world. I'm your mama, and this? She looked up at Beau, who was still holding her hand, his face wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. This is the man who saved all of us. Beau reached out with his one hand, letting the baby's tiny fingers curl around his finger. The baby held on with surprising strength. He's a fighter, Beau said softly, just like his mama. Martha checked Clara carefully, making sure there were no complications. John brought fresh water and clean sheets, and slowly the crisis passed, leaving behind exhaustion and joy and a newborn baby squalling his displeasure at the whole ordeal. The door creaked open and Emma's face appeared, eyes red from crying. Mama? Come here, baby. Emma crept in, followed by Thomas, then the other children. They gathered around the bed, staring in awe at the tiny baby in Clara's arms. That's your brother, Claire said. He came a little early, but he's here now and he's healthy. He's so small, Thomas whispered. He'll grow. You were small once, too. What's his name? Lily asked. Clara looked at Beau. She thought about the past week, the desperation, the salvation, the man who'd appeared out of nowhere and refused to let them die. She thought about second chances and new beginnings, and the family they were building from broken pieces. Michael, she said finally, honoring her dead husband. Michael Beau. Beau's breath caught. Clara, you don't have to. I want to. Michael was his father, but you. She met his eyes. You gave him a chance to be born. Gave all of us a chance. That deserves to be remembered, too. For a long moment, Beau couldn't speak. Then he simply nodded, his hand still held gently by the baby's tiny grip. I'll try to be worthy of it, he said quietly. You already are. Outside, the storm finally broke, rain drumming on the roof in a steady rhythm. Inside the station house, 7 children and 2 adults crowded around a narrow bed, looking at a baby who represented everything they'd fought for: survival, family, hope. So what now? Emma asked. What happens next? Beau looked at Clara, then at all the children, then at baby Michael, already falling asleep in his mother's arms. Now we rest, we heal. And when everyone's strong enough, we go home. He said the word like he was testing it out, seeing how it fit. We go home and we build something that lasts. Together? Thomas asked hopefully. Together. The children erupted in tired but genuine smiles. Even Samuel, always so quiet, looked something almost like happy. They'd survived. They'd found each other. And now they were going to build something real out of the ashes of tragedy. Clara closed her eyes, exhausted beyond measure, but more at peace than she'd been in weeks. The baby slept on her chest. The children whispered excitedly around her. And Beau Riker stood guard, as he had from the moment he found them, refusing to let anything else take what they'd fought so hard to keep. The storm passed. The sun would rise tomorrow. And they would all still be here, together, ready to start building the life they'd nearly died trying to find. They stayed at Henderson Station for 2 weeks. Martha insisted, and when Martha Henderson insisted on something, even Beau Riker knew better than to argue. That baby came 2 months early, Martha said flatly, when Beau suggested they could move on after a few days. Clara needs rest and proper food. The baby needs time to get stronger. And you, Beau Riker, need to stop acting like staying in one place for more than a night is going to kill you. So they stayed. And slowly, impossibly, they began to transform from a collection of survivors into something that resembled a family. Clara spent most of the first week in bed recovering from the brutal delivery. Her body had been pushed past all reasonable limits, and it demanded payment in the form of bone-deep exhaustion and muscles that screamed at the slightest movement. But baby Michael thrived despite his early arrival, nursing with fierce determination and gaining weight day by day. His cries were strong and healthy, and Clara would wake in the night to find Beau sitting beside her bed, one finger held in the baby's tiny grip, his expression soft with wonder. "Can't sleep?" she asked one night, her voice barely a whisper to avoid waking the other children sleeping nearby. Beau shrugged. "Sleep and I have never been close friends. War taught me to be a light sleeper. Desert taught me to be a lighter one. You don't have to keep watch anymore. We're safe here." "I know, old habits." He looked down at Michael, who was making small snuffling sounds in his sleep. "He's getting bigger already. Look at his cheeks. Could swear they're fuller than yesterday." Clara smiled. "Martha's been feeding me like I'm 10 people. All that good food goes straight to him." "That's how it should be." Beau gently extracted his finger from the baby's grip and stood. "You need anything? Water? Another blanket?" "I need you to rest too. When's the last time you slept a full night?" "Don't remember. 2 years? 3? He said it like a joke, but Clara heard the truth underneath. This man had spent so long in survival mode that he'd forgotten how to do anything else. "Beau." She waited until he looked at her. "We're safe now. You can let your guard down." "Maybe." He moved toward the door, then paused. "But not yet. Not until I've kept all my promises." He left before Clara could ask what promises he meant, but she thought she understood. Beau Riker was a man who'd spent 3 years running from guilt and failure. Now he'd found something worth staying for, and he was terrified of failing again. The children adapted to station life with the resilience of young things. Martha put them to work on small tasks, gathering eggs from the henhouse, helping with laundry, sweeping floors, and they attacked each job with earnest dedication. Even little Lily, barely 5 years old, insisted on helping Martha knead bread, her small hands working the dough with fierce concentration. "I can help," she told Martha seriously. "I'm not useless." "Of course you're not useless, child. Who told you that you were?" Lily's face crumpled. "The bad man, Mr. Burrow. He said orphans were useless unless someone wanted them. He said we should be grateful anyone would take us at all." Martha's hands stilled in the bread dough. She looked at Lily with eyes that held decades of hard-earned wisdom and no small amount of fury. "That man was a liar and a thief, and he's in jail where he belongs. You listen to me, Lily. You're not useless. You're not unwanted. You are a child who has survived things that would break most grown men. That makes you strong. That makes you valuable. That makes you someone worth keeping. You understand me?" Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. Martha pulled her into a flowery hug and held her while she cried out grief and fear that had been bottled up too long. Bo watched these small healings happen with quiet attention. He spent his days working, fixing broken things around the station that John had been meaning to get to, chopping wood one-handed with such efficiency that John just shook his head in admiration, training Red and two of John's horses to work together as a team for pulling the wagon. He worked from dawn until well past dark, pushing himself with the same relentless drive that had kept him alive in the desert. "You trying to work yourself to death?" John asked one evening, finding Bo in the barn long after supper, mending harness leather by lantern light. "Just trying to earn our keep." "You earned that the moment you showed up with a dying woman and 6 half-starved children. Everything else is just you being stubborn." John sat down on a hay bale, groaning slightly as his knees protested. "Want to tell me what you're really doing out here every night?" Bo's hand stilled on the leather. "Don't know what you mean." "You're avoiding going inside, avoiding being around all those people, avoiding feeling like part of something." John's voice was gentle but firm. "I recognize the signs, son. I was a soldier too. Different war, but same ghosts. Don't know what ghosts you're talking about. The ones that tell you you don't deserve happiness, that you don't deserve a family, that if you let yourself care about something, it'll be taken away just like everything else was." John leaned forward. "But here's the thing about ghosts, Bo. They can't hurt you unless you let them. And those children in there? That woman who just gave birth? They need you to stop letting the ghosts win." Bo was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail them like I've failed everyone else? Then you'll fail forward. You'll learn. You'll do better next time. That's what being a father is, failing forward until you figure it out." John stood and put a hand on Bo's shoulder. "You already saved their lives. Now comes the hard part. You have to live with them, build something, stay when things get difficult. That's scarier than any desert or storm." "I don't know how." "None of us do. We just do our best and hope it's enough." John headed toward the barn door, then paused. "Emma asked Martha tonight when you were going to come eat with them. Said supper doesn't feel right without you there. Think about that." He left Bo alone with the lantern and the leather and the weight of responsibility settling over his shoulders like a physical thing. The next morning, Bo showed up for breakfast. He sat at the long table with Clara and all the children, awkward and uncertain, but present. Emma beamed at him like he'd given her the moon. Thomas immediately started telling him about the chicken egg he'd found that morning, a double yolker, which Martha said was good luck. Even Samuel, still quiet but slowly emerging from his shell, scooted his chair a little closer to Bo's. After breakfast, Bo cleared his throat. "I've been thinking, if we're going to make a go of that homestead, you children need to learn some things. Reading, writing, numbers like your mama said, but also practical things. How to survive out here." "Like what?" Emma asked eagerly. "Like how to find water, how to tell which plants are safe to eat, how to set snares for rabbits, how to handle a horse." He glanced at Clara. "If that's all right with your mama." "More than all right," Clara said. She was sitting in the rocking chair Martha had brought in, Michael nursing contentedly. "They need to learn everything you can teach them." So the lessons began. Every morning after breakfast, Bo would take the children outside and teach them something new. He showed them how to read the sky for coming weather, how to find north by the sun and stars, how to dig for water in dry creek beds. He taught them plant names and which roots were edible. He showed them how to move quietly, how to read animal tracks, how to build a fire that wouldn't smoke and give away your position. The children absorbed everything with hungry attention. Emma filled a small journal Martha gave her with careful notes and drawings. Thomas practiced his knots until his fingers were sore. Lily learned to whistle using a blade of grass stretched between her thumbs. Even baby Grace, now recovering fully from her illness, would watch from Clara's arms with bright, curious eyes. Samuel surprised everyone. The boy who'd been silent for so long began asking questions, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. He wanted to know everything about horses, about tracking, about the war and what Bo had seen. And Bo, uncomfortable with attention at the best of times, found himself answering honestly, sharing stories he'd never told another soul. "Did it hurt?" Samuel asked one afternoon, gesturing to Bo's missing arm. "When they took it off?" "Samuel," Emma gasped, "you can't ask that." "It's all right," Bo said quietly. He sat down on the ground, and the children gathered around him. "Yes, it hurt worse than anything I'd ever felt. They gave me whiskey and a piece of leather to bite on. Then the surgeon took his saw and—" He trailed off, seeing their rapt faces. "Well, it hurt. But you know what hurt worse?" "What?" Thomas whispered. "Waking up and realizing I'd never hold a rifle the same way again, never rope a steer properly, never do half the things I'd built my whole life around." Bo looked at his stump, at the empty sleeve pinned to his shoulder. "I thought I was useless. Thought I was broken beyond fixing." "But you're not useless," Lily said fiercely. "You do everything better with one arm than most people do with two." Took me a long time to learn that. Took me longer to believe it. He met each of their eyes. "You children have all lost things. Parents, homes, the life you thought you'd have. That pain is real and it matters. But losing something doesn't make you broken. It just means you have to learn a new way of being whole." Samuel considered this gravely. Then he climbed into Bo's lap and wrapped his arms around the man's neck. Bo froze, his one arm hovering uncertainly, before slowly closing around the boy's small frame. "I'm glad you found us," Samuel whispered. "Even if it means you lost your old life. I'm glad you're here for our new one." Bo's eyes closed. "Me too, son. Me too." Clara watched from the porch, Michael sleeping against her shoulder, and felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. This strange, damaged man had somehow become essential to all of them, not because he was trying to replace what they'd lost, but because he was offering something new, a different kind of family, built not on blood but on choice and commitment, and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other. By the second week, Clara was strong enough to walk around the station grounds. Martha hovered like a nervous hen, but Clara insisted she needed to move, needed to feel like herself again. She carried Michael in a sling Martha had made, keeping him close while she slowly regained her strength. One afternoon, she found Bo behind the barn, working with Red and John's 2 horses. He'd rigged up a makeshift harness system and was teaching the animals to work together, moving in unison to pull a heavy log across the ground. "That's impressive," Clara said. Bo glanced over, then returned his attention to the horses. "They need to learn to work as a team if we're going to make the homestead work. Can't have them fighting each other when there's plowing to be done." "I meant you. It's impressive what you can do." He shrugged uncomfortably. "Just making use of what I've got." Clara came closer, adjusting Michael's sling. "Martha told me you've been working 16-hour days, every day since we got here." "Lots to do." "Bo." She waited until he looked at her. "Why are you working yourself into the ground?" "I'm not." "Yes, you are. You barely sleep, you barely eat. You work until you're ready to drop, then you work some more." Her voice was gentle but insistent. "What are you trying to prove?" Bo's jaw worked. He released the horses and walked over to the fence rail, leaning against it with his good arm. "I need to make sure I can handle it. The homestead. Taking care of you and 7 children. Building something that lasts. I need to know I'm capable." "You already proved you're capable." You got us here alive. That was survival. This is different. He struggled for words. This is permanent. This is looking at a woman who just lost her husband and saying I'll help raise his children. This is promising kids who've been abandoned that I won't leave. This is taking on responsibility I never wanted and don't know if I can handle. So you're testing yourself. I'm making sure I won't fail. Clara shifted Michael to her other shoulder and came to stand beside Bo at the fence. You want to know what I see when I look at you? Probably a one-armed drifter who doesn't know what he's gotten himself into. I see a man who stopped when everyone else would have kept riding. I see a man who carried 5 children through a storm while lying in the mud to keep them dry. I see a man who held my hand while I gave birth and didn't flinch once. She turned to face him fully. I see the man who's going to help me raise these children. Not because he has to, because he chooses to. Bo's throat worked. What if I'm not enough? What if you are? They stood in silence for a moment, watching the horses graze peacefully in the afternoon sun. Michael made a small sound and Bo automatically reached over to adjust the sling, his rough fingers gentle against the baby's soft head. He looks like his father, Bo said quietly. Got Michael's nose, his chin. But he's got my stubbornness, and maybe a little of yours too. Clara smiled. He wouldn't have survived without you. None of us would have. You would have found a way. Maybe, or maybe we would have died in that desert and no one would have ever known what happened to us. She put her hand over his where it rested on the baby's head. I meant what I said about his name, Michael Bo. One man gave him life, the other gave him a chance to live it. Both matter equally. Bo looked at her hand on his, then up at her face. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but understanding. Recognition. The acknowledgement that they were in this together now, whatever this turned out to be. I'm going to make mistakes, he said. We all are. I'm going to disappoint you sometimes. I'll disappoint you too. I have nightmares. Bad ones. I wake up fighting sometimes. Then we'll make sure the children know to wake you from a distance. Clara squeezed his hand. Bo, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be present, to show up, to try. That's all any of us can do. He nodded slowly. I can do that. Good. Because Martha says we can move to the homestead in 3 days. The baby's strong enough, I'm strong enough, and we've imposed on the Hendersons long enough. Time to start building our life. Our life, Bo repeated, testing the words. Then, so quietly Clara almost missed it. Yeah, our life. The next 3 days were a flurry of preparation. Bo and John took a day trip to the abandoned homestead to assess what was needed. They returned with a long list: repairs to the cabin roof, a new door for the barn, fencing that needed mending, windows that needed replacing. It was daunting, but Bo attacked the list with methodical determination. Martha packed supplies for them: food, blankets, seeds for planting, chickens in a crate, and a goat she insisted they needed for fresh milk. That baby's going to need more than what Clara can give him as he gets bigger, she said firmly, and the children need proper nutrition. You take Daisy, and you keep her fed, and she'll keep you fed. Clara tried to figure out how to repay all this generosity, but Martha waved her off. You survive out there. You make those children a home. That's payment enough. Besides, she added with a sly look at Bo, I expect Bo Riker to visit at least once a month. Someone needs to make sure he's still sleeping and eating. Yes, ma'am, Bo said meekly. On the morning they left, all the children gathered around the wagon, now repaired and reinforced, loaded with supplies and pulled by a 3-horse team Bo had trained to perfection. Emma held baby Grace. Thomas had baby Michael in a sling across his chest, walking carefully to keep the infant steady. Samuel and Lily helped Bo do final checks on the harness and supplies. John Henderson shook Bo's hand. You take care of them. With my life? I know you will. That's why I'm not worried. John looked at the motley group: pregnant widow, newborn, 6 children, one-armed cowboy. You know what you look like? A disaster waiting to happen? A family. John clapped him on the shoulder. Might be the strangest family I've ever seen, but that's what you are. Own it. Martha hugged each child, then Clara, Then, to everyone's surprise, Bo, "You come back if you need anything. And I mean anything. This desert's harsh, but people don't have to be." They set off mid-morning, the wagon rolling smoothly over ground that had dried since the storms. The 5-mile journey to the homestead took most of the day because they stopped frequently to let the children stretch their legs and tend to the baby. But no one minded. They weren't running anymore. They weren't desperately trying to reach safety. They were simply traveling toward home. The homestead appeared as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. It sat in a small valley with hills rising on 3 sides, protecting it from the worst winds. A creek ran along the eastern edge, its banks lined with cottonwood trees that provided blessed shade. The cabin was small but solid, built from local stone with a wooden roof that showed gaps where shingles had blown away. The barn was larger, also stone, with space for animals and storage. There were remnants of a garden plot, now overgrown with weeds, and a chicken coop that had seen better days but was still standing. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. "This is it?" Emma asked, climbing down from the wagon. "This is it," Bo confirmed. "It's perfect," she breathed. Thomas ran toward the creek, stopping at the edge to stare at the flowing water. "There's fish! I saw one. Can we catch them?" "We'll learn how," Bo promised. Clara stood holding Michael, looking at the cabin that would be their home. It needed work, a lot of work, but she could see the potential. She could imagine the garden in full bloom, chickens pecking in the yard, children playing by the creek. She could imagine life here, real life, not just survival, but actual living. "What do you think?" Bo asked quietly. "I think it's going to be hard. Probably. I think we're going to make mistakes. Definitely. I think..." Clara looked at all the children exploring their new home with wonder and excitement. "I think we're going to be all right." Bo smiled, and this time it came easy. "Yeah, I think we are." They spent the rest of the daylight unloading the wagon and doing basic setup. Bo got a fire going in the cabin's fireplace, checking first to make sure the chimney was clear. Martha had packed bedrolls for everyone, and they spread them out on the cabin floor, creating one large sleeping area where they could all stay together until proper beds could be built. As darkness fell, they gathered around the fire for their first meal in their new home. It was simple: beans and cornbread cooked over the flames, but it tasted like victory. "Can I say something?" Emma asked, her voice serious. "Of course," Clara said. Emma stood up, her thin shoulders squared with determination. "I know we've all lost people, our papas, some of our mamas, everything we had before. But we didn't lose each other. And we got Mr. Riker and baby Michael, and now we have this place." She looked around at all of them. "So I think we should make a promise, all of us together, that no matter what happens, we stay a family. We don't leave each other behind. We don't give up. We're all we've got, so we take care of each other. Forever." "I like that promise," Thomas said solemnly. "Me too," Lily added. Samuel nodded. Even baby Grace gurgled from Clara's arms as if in agreement. They all looked at Bo. He was quiet for a long moment, his face flickering in the firelight, his expression unreadable. Then he stood and walked to the door of the cabin. Using his knife, he began carving into the wooden frame. The children watched in fascination as letters slowly took shape. When Bo stepped back, they could all read what he'd written. "Dunn Riker Homestead. We leave no one behind." "There," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Now it's official. This is our place. We're a family, and we keep our promises." Emma threw her arms around him. Then Thomas did. Then all the children were piling on, hugging Bo from every angle, and he stood there with his one arm trying to hold them all, looking overwhelmed and grateful and terrified and happy all at once. Clara watched from her spot by the fire, Michael sleeping against her chest, and felt tears slide down her cheeks. They were good tears, healing tears, tears for everything they'd lost and everything they'd found and everything they were going to build together. Later, after the children had fallen asleep in their bedrolls, Clara and Bo sat on the cabin's small porch, watching stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Michael nursed drowsily, and the night air was cool and clean. "Thank you," Clara said softly. "For what?" "For stopping. for helping, for staying. She looked at him in the starlight, for choosing us. Bo was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. In the darkness, Clara couldn't quite see what it was until he held it up to catch the moonlight. A ring. Simple, crude, hand-forged from what looked like an old nail that had been heated and shaped with patient care. It wasn't beautiful, but it was honest, real. "I made this at Henderson Station," Bo said, "late at night when everyone else was sleeping. I don't have money for a proper ring. Don't have much of anything, really, except one arm and a stubborn refusal to quit." He turned the ring over in his fingers. "This isn't a proposal. Not yet. Too soon for that. You're still grieving, Michael. You need time. But I wanted you to have this anyway. As a promise." "What kind of promise?" "That I'm here. That I'm staying. That when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd be honored to be more than just someone helping out. I'd be honored to be your husband, these children's father. A real family, not just people surviving together." He held out the ring. "But like I said, no pressure, no expectations. This is just a promise for someday, if you want it." Clara stared at the ring, her heart doing that complicated thing again. It would be so easy to say yes, to take the security he offered, to bind their lives together officially instead of just practically. But Bo was right. It was too soon. She'd loved Michael, still loved him, in the way you love someone who'd been ripped away before you were ready to let go. She needed time to grieve, time to heal, time to figure out who Clara Dunn was now that she wasn't Michael Dunn's wife anymore. "I can't wear it yet," she said quietly, "but I don't want you to keep it either." "What do you want?" Clara thought for a moment, then reached up and untied the cord from around her neck, the same cord she'd been using to hold her wedding band. She slipped Michael's ring off and held it in her palm for a long moment, saying a silent goodbye. Then she threaded Bo's hand-forged ring onto the cord alongside it. "I'll wear them both. One for the man who gave me children and dreams. One for the man who kept those children alive and made new dreams possible." She tied the cord back around her neck, feeling the weight of both rings rest against her heart. "When I'm ready to wear yours properly, on my finger instead of my heart, I'll let you know. Until then, this is my promise to you, that I see you, that I value you, that someday when the grief isn't quite so sharp, I'll give you an answer." Bo nodded slowly. "That's more than fair." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Michael finished nursing and fell into deep sleep. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, and another answered. The creek murmured its endless song. The homestead settled into the night with creaks and sighs. "You know what's funny?" Bo said eventually. "What?" "I spent 3 years trying to outrun my past. 3 years drifting because I thought staying still meant facing things I didn't want to face." He gestured at the cabin, the barn, the land stretched out before them. "And now here I am, staying, facing everything, building a future instead of running from the past. And it's terrifying. But it's also the first time in 3 years I've felt like I'm moving forward instead of just moving." He looked at her, his gray eyes reflecting starlight. "So thank you too, for letting me stop running, for giving me something worth staying for." Clara reached over and took his hand, the only hand he had, and held it firmly. "We're going to make this work." "Yeah," Bo agreed. "We are." Inside the cabin, one of the children stirred and mumbled in sleep. The fire crackled low. The night wrapped around them like a blanket, and for the first time since bandits had destroyed her world, Clara felt something she'd thought was lost forever. She felt home. The first 3 months at the homestead were harder than anyone had anticipated. The cabin roof leaked in 6 places during the next rain, forcing them to position buckets strategically throughout the single room. The garden plot yielded more rocks than soil when they tried to till it. The chicken coop collapsed in a windstorm, sending their hens scattering across the property in panicked squawks. And the well that served the original homesteaders had partially caved in, requiring Bo to spend 3 backbreaking days digging it out and reinforcing the walls with stones he hauled from the creek bed. But they didn't give up. They couldn't afford to. Bo worked from before dawn until well after dark, teaching the children as he went. Emma learned to mix mortar and hold stones steady, while Bo positioned them one-handed. Thomas became an expert at finding and identifying edible plants, bringing back wild onions and herbs that made their simple meals taste almost good. Samuel discovered a talent for working with animals, somehow convincing their temperamental goat Daisy to stand still for milking when she'd kick at anyone else. Lily appointed herself guardian of baby Michael, watching him with the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd already lost too much and refused to lose anything else. Clara did what she could, but her body was still recovering from pregnancy and childbirth. She focused on the things she could manage from inside the cabin: cooking, mending clothes worn thin by hard use, teaching the children their letters and numbers in the evenings by firelight. Michael grew stronger each day, his cries lusty and demanding, his eyes bright with the kind of stubborn will that suggested he'd inherited both his parents' refusal to quit. On a cool October morning, Clara woke to find Beau already gone from his bedroll near the door. This wasn't unusual. The man seemed to need less sleep than any human had a right to, but something felt different today. She couldn't quite name what. She fed Michael and got the other children up and dressed, then started breakfast over the fire. The children had learned to help without being asked, each taking on small responsibilities. Emma fetched water from the creek in buckets they'd gotten from Henderson's. Thomas gathered kindling for the fire. Samuel went to check on the animals, while Lily set out tin plates and cups. They were halfway through breakfast when they heard it, the sound of wagon wheels and horses, multiple horses, coming up the trail toward the homestead. Emma's face went white. "Mama?" "Stay inside," Clara said, her heart hammering. She handed Michael to Lily and moved to the door, trying to see who was approaching. "Please don't let it be trouble. Please don't let it be men with guns or badges or paperwork trying to take her children away." But when the wagon came into view, Clara nearly collapsed with relief. It was John and Martha Henderson, along with 3 other men she didn't recognize. And leading them all on horseback was Beau, looking pleased with himself in a way she'd never seen before. "Morning," Martha called out cheerfully as the wagon pulled to a stop. "We brought help." The children poured out of the cabin, drawn by the commotion. Clara followed more slowly, Michael back in her arms, trying to understand what was happening. "Help?" she asked. "Barn raising," John explained, climbing down from the wagon. "Beau came by Henderson's 2 days ago and mentioned your barn roof was about to collapse. Can't have that with winter coming on. So we rounded up some neighbors and here we are." "But we can't pay." "Nobody's asking you to pay," one of the other men said. He was perhaps 60, with a weathered face and kind eyes. "Name's Robert Chen. My wife was in your wagon train. She died with the others." Clara's breath caught. "Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry. I tried to—" "You buried her proper. Beau told me. Said you gave her words and dignity when you barely had the strength to stand." Robert's voice was thick. "That's worth more than money, ma'am. Let us help. It's the least we can do." The other 2 men introduced themselves. Brothers named Jack and William Morrison, who ran a cattle operation 20 miles south. They'd heard about the family from Martha and had decided that neighborly was more important than busy. "Besides," Jack said with a grin, "we've been curious about the one-armed cowboy who supposedly pulled a wagon through a storm and delivered a baby in the same night. Figured we should meet the legend." Beau looked embarrassed. "Martha's been telling stories again." "True stories," Martha said firmly. She started unloading supplies from the wagon: lumber, nails, tar paper, tools. "Now stop standing around looking pretty and get to work. We've got a barn to fix." What followed was one of the most remarkable days Clara had ever witnessed. The men worked together with practiced efficiency, tearing down the rotted sections of the barn roof and replacing them with new lumber. Beau directed the work one-handed, climbing up on the roof beams with the fearlessness of someone who'd long since accepted that falling was always a possibility. The children helped where they could, passing up tools and nails, holding boards steady, fetching water for the workers. Martha set up a cooking station outside and recruited Clara to help prepare food for the crew. As they worked side by side, Clara found herself talking, really talking, for the first time since Michael's death. "I keep waiting for it to feel real," she said quietly, kneading dough for biscuits. "The homestead, the children, this life. It still feels like something that might disappear if I blink." "That's grief talking," Martha said gently. "You lost your husband, your friends, everything you planned for. It's going to take time for this new life to feel solid. How much time? Different for everyone. But I'll tell you something, Bo Riker's not going anywhere. That man looks at you and those children like you're the reason the sun comes up. Whatever happens, you've got him in your corner. Clara glanced over at Bo, who was balanced on a roof beam, guiding Jack Morrison through a complex joint. He's a good man. He's more than good. He's loyal down to his bones. The kind of man who stays when everyone else runs. Martha paused in her work. You still wearing both rings? Clara's hand went automatically to the cord around her neck, feeling the shape of both rings beneath her dress. Yes. And when do you think you'll be ready to choose just one? I don't know. Is that wrong? Michael's only been gone 4 months. Feels too soon to even think about. There's no too soon or too late. There's only when it feels right. Martha covered Clara's flour-dusted hand with her own. But don't wait so long that you miss your chance at happiness because you think you owe it to the dead to stay miserable. The dead want us to live, Clara. That's what love means. By late afternoon, the barn had a new roof, solid and weatherproof. The men had also reinforced the walls, fixed the door so it actually closed properly, and built new stalls for the animals. What had been a near collapse was now something that might actually last through winter. Martha insisted everyone stay for supper. Clara protested that they didn't have enough food, but Martha had anticipated this and brought supplies. Soon a feast was spread out: roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables from the Hendersons' garden, and a pie that made the children's eyes go wide with longing. They ate outside as the sun set, everyone sitting on whatever flat surface they could find: logs, rocks, the wagon tailgate. Baby Michael was passed from person to person, each adult taking a turn holding him while Clara ate a full meal for the first time in months. The children were giddy with excitement at having visitors, chattering and laughing in a way that reminded Clara they were still just kids despite everything they'd been through. You know what this place needs? William Morrison said, looking around. A proper sign, something that tells people who you are. Bo carved one, Emma said proudly. On the door. Dunn Riker Homestead. We leave no one behind. That's good, Robert Chen said. But I'm thinking bigger. Something visitors can see from the road. Let me work on that. I've got some nice wood scraps and a steady hand with a carving knife. You don't have to, Clara started. We want to, Robert said firmly. You're part of the community now. That means we look after you, and you look after us when we need it. That's how it works out here. As the evening wore on and the visitors prepared to leave, Martha pulled Clara aside. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. There's talk in town, about you and Bo, about this arrangement. Clara's stomach dropped. What kind of talk? The small-minded kind. People saying it's not proper, a widow and a bachelor living under the same roof with all these children, saying the children should be in proper homes with married couples. Martha's face was stern. It's nonsense, of course, but I wanted you to know so you're not blindsided if someone shows up with opinions. What do we do? You live your life, raise those children, let the gossips choke on their own tongues. Martha smiled. But it might help if you and Bo made things official sooner rather than later. Not because you have to, but because it shuts down the talk and protects the children from nosy authorities. Clara thought about the 2 rings around her neck, about Bo's patience, about Michael's memory and Bo's promise, and the impossible tangle of grief and hope that defined her days. I'll think about it, she said. After everyone left, Clara found Bo sitting on the creek bank, watching moonlight play on the water. She sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Thank you, she said, for organizing all that, the barn raising. Couldn't have us losing animals to a collapsed roof, just practical. It was more than practical. You called in favors, asked for help. That's hard for you. Bo shrugged. Getting easier. Turns out people like helping when they know you'll help back. He picked up a stone and tossed it into the creek, watching ripples spread in the moonlight. Martha corner you about the gossip? How did you... I'm not deaf. I hear things when I go to town for supplies. People talking like we can't hear them. His jaw tightened. Doesn't matter what we do, Clara. Some people are going to talk. We could get married tomorrow and they'd still find something to criticize. Maybe. But Martha's right about one thing. Official marriage would protect the children. Make it harder for anyone to question our custody or try to separate them. Is that the only reason you'd consider it? Legal protection? Clara was quiet for a moment, watching the creek flow past. No, she said finally. It's not the only reason, but I need to be honest with you, Beau. I'm not sure I'm ready to love someone again, not the way I loved Michael. That kind of love nearly destroyed me when I lost it. I'm not asking for that kind of love. What are you asking for? Beau turned to face her fully, his gray eyes serious in the moonlight. Partnership, respect, trust. Someone to build a life with who understands that life's messy and hard, and we're both damaged, but we're stronger together than apart. He reached out and took her hand. I know I'm not your first choice. I know if Michael had lived, I'd just be some drifter you passed in the desert and never thought about again. But he didn't live. And here we are. And maybe we can make something good out of all this tragedy. You were good, Beau. You've always been good. Then marry me. Not because you love me passionately or because I'm your dream come true. Marry me because we work well together, because those children need stability, because we've already been through hell side by side and came out the other end still standing. He smiled slightly. Love can come later if it wants to, or not. Either way, we'll have built something worth having. Clara looked at this man who'd saved her life and her children's lives without hesitation, who worked himself into exhaustion every day to give them a home, who held baby Michael with tender reverence and taught the older children with endless patience, who asked for nothing and gave everything. Martha's words echoed in her head. The dead want us to live. That's what love means. Yes, Clara said. Beau blinked. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. When we've got the homestead through winter and spring planting is done and Michael's old enough to sleep through the night. Spring, maybe. A simple ceremony at Henderson's station with just the children and the Hendersons as witnesses. Spring, Beau repeated, like he was testing the word. Then a smile broke across his face, genuine and unguarded and transforming. Spring. I can work with spring. Clara reached up and untied the cord from around her neck. She held both rings in her palm, Michael's wedding band and Beau's hand-forged promise. Slowly, deliberately, she slipped Michael's ring off the cord and put it in her pocket, over her heart but no longer on display. Then she slid Beau's ring onto her finger. It was too big, made for a man's hand, but she could feel the care that had gone into shaping it. I'll get you a proper ring, Beau said. Something that fits. This one fits just fine. It's honest, like you. Clara leaned over and kissed his cheek, chaste and gentle. Thank you for waiting, for not pushing. I'd wait 10 years if that's what you needed. Let's hope it doesn't take that long. They sat by the creek until the cold drove them inside, talking about spring planting and what animals they might buy, and whether they should add a room to the cabin before the baby arrived. Because that was their reality now, practical discussions about building a life, one decision at a time. Winter came hard and fast, but they were ready. The barn was solid. The cabin roof no longer leaked. They'd stored enough food to see them through, and Beau had taught the children how to set trap lines for rabbits and squirrels to supplement their supplies. The creek froze at the edges but kept flowing in the middle, providing water even in the coldest months. The children thrived. Emma grew 3 inches and became Beau's right hand, able to anticipate what he needed before he asked. Thomas lost 2 baby teeth and started reading chapter books aloud to the younger children by firelight. Samuel came completely out of his shell, chattering nonstop about horses and asking if maybe they could get another one in the spring. Lily taught herself to sew, mending clothes with tiny, careful stitches. And baby Grace, now a toddler, took her first steps on Christmas morning, stumbling from Clara's arms to Beau's with a triumphant squeal. Michael grew fat and happy, his baby smiles coming early and often. He had a particular fondness for Beau, reaching for him whenever the man came near, fussing when anyone else tried to hold him but settling instantly in Beau's one arm. He knows you're safe, Clara said one night, watching Beau pace the cabin with the fussy baby. Either that or he just likes the beard. Babies are weird about beards. No, he knows. Children always know. In February, Robert Chen made good on his promise and delivered a hand-carved sign, 3 feet wide, letters burned deep into seasoned wood. Dunn Riker Homestead, it proclaimed in bold letters, with "We leave no one behind" carved smaller beneath. Bo and the children installed it at the entrance to their property, visible from the main trail. Emma insisted on a small ceremony, with everyone gathered around as Bo hammered the final nail. "This is our home," Emma said solemnly, "forever and ever." "Forever and ever," the other children echoed. March brought the first hints of spring, green shoots pushing through winter-brown grass, migratory birds returning from the south, the creek swelling with snowmelt from the distant mountains. Bo and the children began preparing the garden plot, working the soil until it was soft and ready for planting. They'd acquired seeds from Henderson's station, vegetables, herbs, even a few flowers that Emma desperately wanted. And then, on a warm April morning, Clara woke to find the cabin decorated with wildflowers. They were everywhere, in mason jars on the table, tucked into the cracks between stones in the wall, woven into a crown that someone had left on her pillow. Emma appeared in the doorway, grinning. "Mr. Riker says today's the day. If you're ready." Clara's heart skipped. The day? The wedding day. We've been planning it for weeks. While you were busy with the baby, we got everything ready. Emma bounced on her toes. "The Hendersons are coming, and Mr. Chen and the Morrison brothers, and there's a cake. Well, Martha made the cake because we don't know how, but we helped. Please say you're ready, Mama. Mr. Riker's been checking his hair in the water bucket for an hour." Clara started laughing. Of course Bo had organized this. The man who claimed to be terrible with people had somehow arranged an entire wedding without her knowing. "Tell Mr. Riker I'll be ready in an hour," she said. The children scattered with excited whispers. Clara bathed using the precious warm water they'd heated, then dressed in her best dress, the one Martha had helped her make from fabric they'd traded for at the general store. It was simple calico, but clean and mended and as close to wedding appropriate as she was going to get. She looked at herself in the small mirror Bo had bought her for Christmas. Not the young woman who'd married Michael full of dreams and optimism. Not the desperate widow who'd nearly died in the desert. Someone in between, older, scarred by loss but healing. Someone who'd learned that life went on, and sometimes that was enough. The ceremony took place under the cottonwood trees by the creek. Martha had strung flowers through the branches. John Henderson had cleaned up and was wearing an actual tie. The children were scrubbed and combed and vibrating with barely contained excitement. And Bo stood waiting, wearing clothes Clara had never seen before, must have bought them on one of his trips to town, looking uncomfortable but determined. There was no preacher. John Henderson, as a justice of the peace, could perform the legal ceremony, and that was enough. They didn't need grand promises or poetic vows. They needed something real. John kept it simple. Marriage is more than romance. It's partnership. It's choosing to face life's hardships together. It's building something bigger than yourself. Bo, Clara, you've already proven you can survive together. Now you're promising to live together. That's a different challenge, but I suspect you're up for it. "I am," Bo said firmly. "I am," Clara echoed. "Then by the authority vested in me by the territory of Arizona, I pronounce you husband and wife. Bo, you may kiss your bride." Bo looked panicked for a moment, like this part hadn't occurred to him. Clara smiled and stepped forward, kissing him gently. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't the kind of kiss that made the world disappear, but it was warm and honest and full of promise, and that was better than passion. The children erupted in cheers. Martha dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. John clapped Bo on the back hard enough to make him stumble. And just like that, Clara Dunn became Clara Riker, and their makeshift family became official in the eyes of the law and God and anyone who cared to judge. The celebration lasted all day. They ate Martha's cake, 3 layers of honey sweetness that the children attacked with abandon. The Morrison brothers produced a fiddle and harmonica, and there was dancing in the grass, clumsy and joyful. Robert Chen gave them a pair of chickens as a wedding present, which Samuel immediately named Frederick and Victoria and swore to protect with his life. As evening fell and their guests prepared to leave, Emma pulled Clara aside. "Are you happy, Mama?" she asked quietly. Clara looked around, at the homestead they'd built from nothing, at the children playing tag in the fading light, at Bo laughing at something John Henderson said while baby Michael dozed in his arms, at the life they'd cobbled together from tragedy and stubbornness and the refusal to give up. "Yes," she said, surprised to find it was true. "Yes, baby, I am." Good, because we like it here. We like being a family. All of us together. Me too. That night, after the children had finally collapsed into sleep and the visitors had gone home and the homestead had settled into quiet, Clara and Beau sat outside under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. I built you something, Beau said. Was going to save it for later, but he stood and walked to the side of the cabin, returning with something he'd been hiding, a rocking chair, beautifully crafted from cottonwood. The wood sanded smooth and the joints fitted perfectly. You made this? Clara ran her hand over the armrest, marveling at the craftsmanship. When? Little bit at a time, after everyone was asleep. Wanted you to have something comfortable for rocking the baby. He looked embarrassed. I know it's not much. It's perfect. Clara sat down and began to rock gently. The chair moved smoothly, no creaks or wobbles. You made this with one hand? I make everything with one hand. Comes with the territory. Clara pulled him down to sit beside the chair. Thank you for everything. The chair, the wedding, this life. It's your life too, our life. That's the whole point. He was quiet for a moment. I need to tell you something. I'm not good at the romantic gestures. I won't bring you flowers every week or write you poetry. I'm going to forget important dates and say the wrong thing and disappoint you sometimes. I know. But I'll work hard. I'll provide for this family. I'll protect these children with my life. I'll be faithful and steady and present. That's what I can offer. Is it enough? Clara looked at this man who'd learned to live a full life with one arm because quitting wasn't in his vocabulary, who'd saved her family when no one else would have bothered, who asked for so little and gave so much. It's more than enough, she said. It's everything. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the western sky. From inside the cabin came the sound of children breathing deep and even. The animals settled in the barn. The creek sang its endless song. And the homestead, their homestead, stood solid against the night. Months passed into years, marked by seasons and harvests, and the slow accumulation of a life built day by day. The children grew. Emma became a young woman, serious and capable, taking on more responsibility as Clara needed it. Thomas developed a passion for building things, constantly constructing elaborate contraptions from wood and rope. Samuel got his horse, a gentle mare they named Patience, and spent every free moment learning to ride. Lily discovered a talent for growing things, turning their garden into something remarkable. Grace lost her baby roundness and became a whirlwind of energy and questions. Michael thrived, growing strong and curious, following Beau around like a devoted shadow. When he was 3, he started calling Beau Papa, with the casual certainty of a child who'd never known anything different. Clara's heart clenched the first time she heard it, but Beau handled it with characteristic steadiness. I'm honored, he told Michael seriously. But you should know about your other papa too. The man your mama loved first. The man who gave you his name. So they told Michael stories about the first Michael Dunn, his bravery, his dreams, his love for his family. They made sure he knew that having 2 fathers, one in memory and one in life, didn't diminish either. It meant he was loved twice over. 2 years after their wedding, Clara gave birth to another baby, a girl they named Martha Rose, after the woman who'd helped them and in honor of new beginnings. Beau delivered this one too, since Dr. Foster from town couldn't make it through a spring storm. He handled it with the same calm competence he brought to everything, though Clara noticed his hand shook afterward when he thought no one was looking. You all right? She asked, watching him pace with the newborn. I keep thinking about what could go wrong. What if I'd made a mistake? What if something had happened to you or the baby? He looked at Martha Rose with an expression of mingled terror and wonder. I've got too much to lose now, Clara. That scares me more than anything. I used to think I had nothing to lose, Clara said quietly. After Michael died, after the desert nearly killed us, I thought I'd already lost everything that mattered. But then I realized I had everything to gain. You, this family, this life. And yes, it's terrifying because we could lose it. But that's what makes it worth having. Beau sat down beside her, cradling Martha Rose with the practiced ease of a man who'd held many babies. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between pulling a wagon through hell and marrying a stubborn cowboy. She leaned her head on his shoulder. We're going to be fine, Bo. All of us. Together. And they were. The homestead prospered. Their garden fed them and provided surplus to trade. Bo's reputation as a horse trainer spread, bringing customers who paid good money for his expertise. The children grew healthy and educated, thanks to lessons from Clara and practical training from Bo. They added rooms to the cabin as the family grew, then a second barn when the first became too crowded with animals. The gossips eventually found someone else to talk about. The community came to accept the Rikers for what they were, a family that didn't fit traditional molds but worked anyway. And anyone who questioned their legitimacy only had to visit the homestead once to see 7 thriving children and 2 parents who'd built something real from nothing. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Clara found Bo at the creek, in the same spot where he'd proposed. She sat beside him, still holding that space of comfortable silence they'd developed over the years. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How far we've come. How close we came to not making it." He picked up a stone and tossed it into the water. "5 years ago, you were dying in the desert, and I was drifting without purpose. Now look at us." Clara looked back at the homestead. 9 children now, 7 of the original crew plus Martha Rose and baby Jacob, born just last winter. The cabin had grown into a proper house. The barn was full of healthy animals. The garden flourished. Smoke rose from the chimney where Emma was cooking supper. Thomas had built a swing near the creek where the younger children played. It looked like the kind of place that had always been there, solid and permanent. "I love you," Clara said. Bo turned to look at her, surprise clear in his face. "What?" "I love you. I don't know exactly when it happened, probably gradually, a little bit every day over 5 years, but it's there now, full and real and solid." She took his hand. "I know you said I didn't have to. That partnership was enough. But I wanted you to know, you're not just my partner or my husband or the children's father. You're the man I love, the man I choose every day." Bo's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Clara, you don't have to say it back. I know you're not good with words. I just wanted you to know." "I'm terrible with words," Bo agreed. "Always have been. But I'll try." He cleared his throat. "I look at you and I see the strongest person I've ever met. I watch you with the children, and I see everything I wish I could be. Patient, kind, endlessly giving. I wake up every morning grateful you're beside me, and I go to sleep every night hoping I was worthy of another day." He cupped her face with his hand. "I don't know if that's love. I don't know if I'm capable of the kind of love you deserve. But if love means wanting to give someone everything you are and everything you have, then yes. I love you. Have for years, probably since I watched you refuse to give up in that desert. They kissed, long and deep and full of 5 years' worth of partnership, turning into something more. When they pulled apart, Clara was crying, but they were happy tears. "We should get back," she said. "Emma's making supper and she'll be annoyed if we're late." "Let her be annoyed for 5 more minutes." Bo pulled Clara close, wrapping his arm around her. "I want to remember this moment, this feeling, this place, the exact spot where I stopped drifting and started living." So they sat by the creek as the sun set, watching light paint the sky in shades of gold and red and purple. Behind them, their children's laughter floated on the evening air. The homestead stood solid and welcoming, and 2 people who'd been broken by life and put back together by stubbornness, and each other held on tight to what they'd built. Years later, when the children were grown and starting families of their own, when the homestead had expanded to include additional buildings and more land, when Bo's hair had gone gray and Clara's hands were gnarled from decades of hard work, they would still sit by that creek and remember. They'd remember the desert that nearly killed them, the storm that tested them, the choices that saved them. They'd remember building a life one decision at a time, one day at a time, one act of stubborn refusal to quit at a time. But most of all, they'd remember that moment when everything changed. When Clara Dunn, 7 months pregnant and dying of thirst, looked up to see a one-armed cowboy on horseback. When Bo Riker, drifting and purposeless, made the choice to stop instead of riding past. That single choice, to stop, to help, to stay, had created everything that followed. 7 children raised to adulthood, 2 more born into love and security. A homestead that lasted generations. A family that proved blood wasn't the only thing that bound people together. And it all started with 4 simple words that changed everything. You're coming with me. Emma would tell her own children that story someday, sitting in the same rocking chair Bo had built for Clara all those years ago. She'd tell them about the desert and the storm and the man who saved them all. She'd tell them about stubbornness and love and the power of refusing to walk past someone who needs help. And she'd end the story the same way every time, with the words carved into the old sign that still stood at the entrance to the homestead, worn by weather but still legible. Dunn Riker Homestead. We leave no one behind, because that was their legacy. Not the land or the buildings or the wealth they'd accumulated. Their legacy was simpler and more profound. They'd proven that family wasn't about who you started with, but who you refused to quit on, who you chose to build a life with day after difficult day, through desert and storm, and all the challenges life threw at you. They'd proven that sometimes salvation came as a stubborn man with one arm who simply refused to let anyone else die on his watch. And sometimes that was miracle enough. The end.